And now I'd like to call to order the March 4th, 2020 Assisted Housing Governing Board meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member DeCiccio?
Here.
Board Member Garcia? Board Member Nowakowski? Board Member Pastor? Board Member Stark? Board Member Waring? Here. Board Member Wiesahan?
Here. Oh, sorry.
Board Member Williams?
Yes.
Vice Chair Guardado?
Here.
Chairwoman Gallego?
Here. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2019.
I move for the motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I would entertain a motion in item number 4.
I move for the motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. We do have 2 cards on this agenda item. We'll begin with Rosa Trottle.
Yes.
And Rosa will have 2 minutes to address the Phoenix City Council. Rosa will be followed by Susan Giudino.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Please begin. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rosa Trotter, and I live at 1125 North 3rd Street, apartment 202. And I want to say I thank God for the room, but I do not want to move. And I just would like to say I know the Lord will provide for us. And and it's so convenient where I live at because our church is in South Phoenix. And I hope I will not move way out somewhere. It's convenient for me, for the doctor, and the stores, and the light rail, and the buses. But if I have to move way out, it'd be inconvenient for me. I'm 90 years of age, and my husband is 88, and it would be most inconvenient for me. And I do thank God for all His people, and I love God. And I thank God for this privilege, me be able to speak. And I do thank the one that came out to speak to us. And I very thankful for that. And I want to say it's an event coming up at the park, and they're going to have music. And then when they play the music, it'd be so loud to my apartment, be vibrating. And I wish it would be possible that it could be something done about that, and consider us old people and have them adjust the music and not have it so loud. Thank you. May God bless you all.
Thank you for your testimony. Our final card for the Assisted Housing Governing Board is from Susan.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. My name is Susan Giudino. I am here to talk about the Deck Park Vista Senior Living Apartments, and I am hoping that you would take into consideration that these are senior citizens living here, and they are going to be displaced. It was brought to my attention that they are they're going to be forced to move. So far, there is no plan of what's going to happen, where they're going to go. Some people, like Ms. Trottle, they're 89 years old. They can't up and move. They have no family, nowhere to go. And I'm wanting to know, this isn't the first rodeo that this is happening, so there should be a plan and answers already of what's going to happen, or how these senior citizens are going to be taken care of. It's not fair. Our homeless problem is growing, and it's even more unfair that these senior citizens are going to be thrown out with nowhere to go. So I'm just hoping that there are more answers, and there is more of a proactive plan and not a reactive plan for them when this happens. And hopefully it doesn't get abolished. It doesn't get, they don't get thrown out. These are people, and we need to think about that. Their lives. Think of it if it's your parent or your grandparent or something. I don't have, it's awful. Look, she can barely walk. So we need to keep them in mind. Lives matter. Everybody matters, no matter what age. So thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Stotler, our housing director, is here. Councilmember Garcia.
Yes. And to Ms. Trotter, thank you so much for coming, and it was a pleasure to be in your home 2 days ago. We were there this morning, Cindy was there as well, and I just want to make sure and put on record that we're not going to throw anyone out without having a place to go, and that there's a process that we delineated today of what's going to happen with the apartments. We're going to get the proposals this week, and no decision on this will be made until May and then in June. And we'll make sure that if any changes happen, that we take care of you. We know all you've done for the community. We understand your church is very important to you, and we'll make sure that you're taken care of. So thank you so much for coming and testifying today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Thank you for taking the time. And Cindy Stotler is our housing director. Cindy, could you speak generally about when we are redeveloping a project, the process, and how we make sure people continue to have housing?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. When we redevelop a housing project that the city owns, we follow generally the Uniform Relocation Act, the federal guidelines in there, and what that calls for is for us to meet with each household and identify their household needs, and then we offer other housing that is similar to the current housing that they're in. So the city owns 13 other senior properties in addition to Deck Park Vista, and we have listed those properties and provided brochures to these residents, and they have their choice of one of those 13 properties to be relocated to. So we meet with the household, we decide based on their needs and whether they want to be close to church or work or something like that. We identify the properties that are best for them. We'll take them out there and drive them around and let them choose which property is their first priority, second priority, and third priority. We also provide moving services, so we will move them, we will pack them, move them, and unpack them if they are unable to unpack for themselves, or it's their choice. We will give them a check to pay for the moving costs, because some people have family that moves them and they prefer to have cash. And then these residents of Deck Park Vista will have the first right of return. Should we redevelop Deck Park Vista and demolish it and temporarily relocate them, they have the first right of return to come back to the new unit. We have, with your approval, put Section 8 project-based vouchers on this project so that they can come back and go in there and only pay 30% of their income for rent. So that's how we handle relocations.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilwoman Pastor.
I have a question in moving, because one of the concerns that I've been getting, and also from my mother has been getting concerns, so I get the concerns, is that they're not going to really have a choice of where to move. And what I mean is they're going to have an option of where to move. And some, just in my mind, I'm not an elderly, but in my space, I don't like to move, and I like to stay where I'm hunkered and everything else. So the difficulty, just even the process, the mental process of moving, it takes a toll. My question is, are they going to be moved to somewhere in the same vicinity of what they're used to and used to the amenities that they have? Or are they going to be given options, and it may be a mile, 2 miles, maybe 5 miles away from where they originally are staying? I think we need well, Councilman Garcia, I think you'll figure it out. But these are the questions and the fear that is out in the community at this moment. And there's a whole collective within the community that is now organizing. And so I understand why, my understanding is, because it came through my subcommittee, is that the reason why we are doing what we're doing is in order to add more apartments, I'm going to use apartments, to add more
housing to this area so that we could have more affordability of senior housing. Okay, I just wanted to put that on the record as to why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes, Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, we are looking to redevelop Deck Park Vista because it is currently, the property is underutilized. It is 2 acres with 56 units on it in the middle of downtown. It has zoning entitlement for over 400 units. So if we are looking to create more affordable housing, and we are looking to create more affordable housing, we have a deficit of almost 100,000 affordable housing units in the city. So we are trying every means that we have, using every tool that we have to create more affordable housing. So we are looking for a dramatic increase in affordable housing on this site because we have the entitlement rights. The second question you had was where they are moving. And what we have offered these residents for relocation is 13 other properties that the city owns. And those properties are located throughout the city. We have already spoken to residents this morning, as Councilman Garcia alluded to. We had 43 residents in attendance this morning and answered many of their questions that were related to your question as to where they would move and would they be near amenities that they liked. They have their choice of one of those 13 properties. We don't have, the city owns about 4 properties in the vicinity of downtown, not exactly in the same location as Deck Park Vista, but in the vicinity of downtown. And what we told the residents was we would take them to each one, and if their priority was their church, as was Rosa, or their grocery store or something else, we would try to find one that they could walk to or get to easily in that way. But we are offering the city properties because with the city property, we are able to move them and put them at the top of the wait list, so ensuring that they get a unit, and also keep their rent at the same amount as it is at Deck Park Vista. So the reason we're moving them to city properties in all the different locations is to keep them whole and safe and move them at no increased expense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, we have a motion on the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you so much. We will now adjourn the Assisted Housing Governing Board meeting. Thank you to our board member. I will now call to order the City Council former meeting for March 4th, 2020. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski?
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor? Councilwoman Stark? Councilman Waring? Councilwoman Williams? Vice Mayor Guardado?
Here.
Mayor Gallego?
Here. We have Mario Barajas here today to provide interpretation service. Mario, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My name is Mario Barajas. I'm going to be making a brief statement in Spanish for our Spanish speakers. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Mario Barajas. Voy a estar sirviendo como su intérprete de español esta tarde. Si acaso hubiera alguien quien está en asistencia necesitando el servicio de un intérprete de español, podrán acudir a cualquier miembro de personal de la ciudad hacia la parte de atrás del edificio para conseguir los audífonos para escuchar la interpretación. Gracias. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mario. Will the city clerk please read the 24-hour paragraph?
The titles of the following ordinance and resolution numbers on the agenda were available to the public at least 24 hours prior to this council meeting and therefore may be read by title or agenda item only. Ordinances number G6658, 6674, 6677, 6680 through 6684, S46372, 46391 through 46424, and Resolution 21811.
Nice job. Thank you. We next move to the meeting minutes. Councilwoman Pastor, have you had a chance to review the formal meeting minutes from June 19th, 2019?
I have. Make approval.
We have a motion for approval and a second. We do have a card from a member of our community wishing to address the council. On this item, we will only take testimony as to whether the meeting minutes of the June 19th, 2019 meeting were accurate. For other topics, you would address that during the agendized topic number or during call to the public. So if you do have testimony only on the accuracy of the meeting minutes, we would call Lita Flowers.
Hello, I am Lita Flowers. I will rest for the citizens' comments, but I have one thing. Denial of a hearing is against the people, for the government.
Thank you. All those in favor of approval of the June 19th, 2019 meeting minutes, please say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Meeting minutes pass unanimously. We next move to our boards and commissions. Do we have a motion on mayor and city council board and commission nominations?
I would move their approval.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We have a distinguished group of Phoenix leaders here today to be sworn in, including many who are helping us in our effort to end HIV/AIDS in the city of Phoenix. Thank you for your service. We will now swear you in. Please raise your right hand. I state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of, state your office, according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations and thank you for your service. We next move to the liquor license application portion of our agenda. Do we have a motion on liquor licenses?
Mayor, I would move to approve items 3 through 36, noting item 3 is a motion with no recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yeah.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor. Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 9-0. Thank you. City Clerk, are we ready for ordinances, resolutions, new business, and planning and zoning?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you. Acting Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
I would move to approve items 37 to 93, except the following: 41, 45, 50, 54, 56, 57, 92, and 93. Noting items 87, 90, and 91 have been continued to March 18th.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor. Stark.
Yes.
Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. We next move to item 41, the National Association of City Transportation Officials Annual Dues.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Garcia. Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 7-2. We next move to item 45, which is acquisition of real property along State Route 51. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. David Gironda is here. March neutral on the item. David?
Yes, I just got notice of this meeting an hour ago, so I wasn't sure exactly what it was about, but regarding the pipeline going through that area, I've already spoken a couple of meetings ago regarding the fact that I was a member of SPAR, the Squaw Peak Area Residents Steering Committee, that when the Pavar was abandoned for the northbound lanes, it was to be removed from dedication to where there would be no street traffic or utilities through that area. I'm not sure, because of the fact that this is along the east side of State Route 51, if this motion actually carries for that, but I was told there is being a design being reconsidered to keep as much of it out of the mountain preserves as possible. I would hope that would be the access road to the parking lot to Dreamy Draw, that it would follow that and follow the pavement area of the parking lot, because then you're not disturbing any desert up to that point. And of course, that's a major concern for another organization which I'm representing, the Phoenix Mountains Preservation Council. So, by the way, at the North Mountain Visitor Center on April 4th, we're having a 50th anniversary of our group serving the city of Phoenix. The city council should be receiving invitations, and of course the public is all welcome. That's Saturday, April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy anniversary.
And I love your shirt.
Any council member?
It's about 20 years old.
Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes unanimously. We next move to item 50, the 2025 Phoenix Food Action Plan. We welcome our Deputy City Manager, Karen Peters, up for a brief presentation. Yeah, we would entertain a motion.
I would move approval of this, but I want to make the comment. On community, I expect a hearing in each district, because we have that problem throughout the city.
Second. So you want?
We have a motion and a second.
Well, they're having community meetings, but so far they're only in 2 districts.
Okay,
And I'm
so-
asking that they have one in every district, because
That's
we
what I
all
need
have that
clarity
problem.
with. That's what I needed clarity with, to understand. You're wanting the plan to go through every district. Got it.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you. I am Karen Peters, and joining me here today are our Environmental Programs Office Coordinator, Nancy Allen, as well as Roseanne Albright from that office, who has been the primary staff person on the Food Action Plan now for a couple of years. Good hard work. So what we wanted to talk briefly about is the Food Action Plan, which is an outgrowth of the 2015 voter-approved 2025 General Plan, also referred to as Plan Phoenix, which included a goal for establishing a healthy food system in which all of our residents have ready access to fresh, healthy, and affordable food. So in order to implement that plan item, staff embarked on a process to do some research and identify what the strengths and weaknesses are in our city regarding food. And the data came back very compelling that this was a necessary thing. About half of our population today, according to the data that was assembled, lives in a food desert. And I think that Roseanne can talk a little bit about what that is if there are questions. But I'm going to ask Roseanne to walk us through very briefly what the goals of the plan are and what outreach was done to get the plan put together.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much for hearing this today. We have gone over with a lot of data that was collected through a community food assessment that was done for the entire Maricopa County so we could understand the status of the food system. We also did a lot of collaboration and partnership with others, food system stakeholders that are working in this arena that provided a lot of data and access to other organizations and individuals as well. So we have 5 simple goals. One is really healthy food for all, just to recognize that everyone should have access to healthy food, affordable and culturally appropriate. Our second goal is to strengthen the local economy, to recognize that food production, food businesses, any kind of establishments that have anything to do with the food system should be recognized as being valuable to our economy. And then our third goal is to celebrate local and diverse agriculture and really provide the opportunity and reduce barriers so that urban agriculture for either commercial use or even residential agriculture is beneficial and can be easily done. And our fourth goal is to maintain a sustainable environment, which is where we address items like food waste, food loss, and food rescue. And we also look at obtaining and doing sustainable business practices wherever possible in the food system. And our last goal is to develop a resilient food system, to look at our growing population, changes in the economy, changes in our heat and other kinds of conditions that might affect our food system, and develop it in a way that we can be resilient for the future and have healthy food available for everyone. So underneath all of those goals, there are strategies and actions that we'll be taking over the next few years. So I'm just going to go over really quickly some of those things. One of the items we wanted to make sure that we did was to measure our progress. So we feel like that's really important. So we came up with a set of metrics that identifies these 9 items. I won't go through each one of them, but our first one to start with is the percent of people that are food insecure. So we'll take the baseline and see how we measure year to year to make improvements. So less people are going hungry and more people have access to food. We'll also look at the number of businesses and food assets that we create, as noted in number 6. And then we'll look at the percentage of food that is rescued. And then lastly, we also want to look at health changes and behaviors that may result as that improve as a result of access to healthy food. And all of those measures will be taken not only through us directly, but a lot of them in partnership with already existing entities like the Maricopa County Department of Public Health does a lot of these measurements. So we'll measure those on an annual basis and be able to adjust and be flexible with this plan to make sure that we continue to make improvements. So just really quickly, in our first year, by the end of this year, we're looking at G1S2 refers to Goal 1, Strategy 2, and just a few of the actions that are in there is to look at financial resources that might be available out there. I'm really excited that we've partnered with all of our departments, including the Community and Economic Development Department, to start looking at our food assets and how we can improve those. We'll be looking at, for example, in G3S2, exploring the development of community land trust or preservation mechanisms, because land use was one of those items that we heard over and over again that we need to address. And lastly, looking at supporting ways to stop food from entering the waste stream. So those are some basic things. We'll have a lot of events coming up. This is just a few. On March 18th, we have Leah Penniman, who is a well-known author, activist, and farmer who is coming out to Phoenix, and we'll be doing a community food conversation and dinner in the evening at our wonderful Spaces of Opportunity project on 12th Avenue and Vineyard. The public is invited. It's free of charge. It'll be a great event. April 4th, we have a Food and Politics of Place event open to the public at Rio Salado. A lot of great storytelling and information we'll collect about food. And then lastly, the April 28th and 29th, the Arizona Food and Farm Forum is going to be presented with Local First right here in South Phoenix at Corona Ranch. So this is the first time it's ever been done in South Phoenix. And then I'm not going to go through all of these items, but they're there. What I want to end with is that, and I apologize for the small print on this, but we wanted to try to squish it into one slide. It's labeled outreach, but it's also part of our input, collaboration, and partnerships. So everything from residents, health professionals, school districts, other government agencies, retail, folks like International Rescue Committee, farmers were a big part of this, retail, Fry's Kroger, food banks, University of Arizona and their cooperative extension, all of their programs, and then even the formal partnerships that I mentioned as well. So OEP is a small department. I've been primarily working on this for the past couple of years, so in order to be as efficient as possible, we partnered with all these folks to be able to reach out even deeper into the community. So I just want to give you just a brief look at, these are all of the organizations that are part of the Health Improvement Partnership of Maricopa County HIP-MC network. So by partnering with them, we were also able to reach all of these organizations as well. And the same with the Maricopa County Food System Coalition. These are members that have been with the organization over the past 5 years, and again, we're able to access all of that network through those partnerships. So thank you for allowing us to bring this to you today, and we're excited to be able to move forward and start implementing these actions.
Thank you. You have been busy. We have 20 individuals wishing to address the council, all marked in favor. We'll begin with Elise from Farm Express, followed by Hanifa Muhammad.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, thank you so much for having me. My name is Elise Gaitis, and I'm executive director of the organization that runs Farm Express. For the past 6 years, we've operated mobile produce markets out of retired buses in communities with limited access to healthy food. Over the years, we've provided service to thousands of Phoenix residents who, for one reason or the other, are unable to purchase, prepare, or consume enough fruits and vegetables on a regular basis. We've had tremendous support from city staff and city leadership, and our program has become a trusted resource for residents who experience low income. Our goal is to give everyone the opportunity to make their own food choices for themselves and their families. However, when residents live more than a mile from a grocery store, when they're not connected to an accessible public transit route, or they experience mobility and health challenges that prevent them from shopping for food on a regular basis, we become one of their only options to buy food. We're incredibly proud of our ability to meet our customers' needs, but we shouldn't be the only ones in this fight to meet the needs, their healthy food needs. The City of Phoenix Food Action Plan is foundational to creating more opportunities for Phoenicians to access healthy, affordable food on a regular basis in the places that they live, work, learn, and play. This plan provides opportunities for city staff as well as external community organizations to support local food businesses and give residents who need it better access to high-quality, affordable fruits and vegetables. I've followed the evolution of the city's work in the food system since I was a graduate intern with Plan Phoenix in 2013. I was the annoying one trying to get the health policy all over the general plan. For what it's worth, city staff are some of the most steadfast and dedicated people I've ever worked with. And as a resident and a community advocate, I'm incredibly proud of this work and this plan. I fully support the adoption of the Food Action Plan, and I look forward to working together to create a thriving food system for everybody in Phoenix. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hanifa will be followed by Fatima Muhammad Roque.
Good afternoon. My name's Hanifa Muhammad. I am a naturopathic physician here in Phoenix. I am a mother and have children that live in South Phoenix. I've been in this community, I would say probably longer than 10, 15 years at this point, and really love South Phoenix. So if you've ever been down there, you know the beauty of it. The food action plan, however, is something that is quite important. If you've been to South Phoenix, you know that the access to healthy food is not as much as if you go to Tempe or Mesa or Scottsdale. I don't have a Whole Foods in my neighborhood, and not that I need one, but I do need access to some sort of healthy food options. My options should not be limited to McDonald's and Wendy's and those type of options. So the food action plan does not necessarily say that this is all on you. What I love about this plan is the equitable engagement. It comes to the community and says, what is your lived experience? And how can we use that lived experience to create an equitable and affordable means of healthy food in this neighborhood and in this community? There's no reason that people have to suffer from diabetes and that we have to have rates of cancer and hypertension that are directly related to the food that they eat in their community. So, let's work with a plan like this. This plan is not hurting anyone, it is actually helping everyone and opening us up to ideas and things that we can do that maybe have not been thought about before. So, I am in favor of this plan. I am helping and working with this plan to bring my forte to how we can help this situation and get healthy food to children and mothers and fathers that is equitable to any other city or town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Fatima will be followed by Lola Levesque.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Fatima Muhammad Roque. I am a proud member of the South Phoenix community. I have a bachelor's degree in plant biology and a master's in public health. I'm also a doula and a student midwife. I come up here kind of disheartened in light of the comments that Chief of Staff Sam Stone made on Twitter with hashtag Phoenix and hashtag fraud. I won't directly state those comments. But I'm here in support of the Food Action Plan as a source of empowerment for our community. I work with women and children and families, and I've worked with them to reduce infant mortality rates in our community. Infant mortality is the canary in the coal mine. It's the sacrifice that alerts you if the environment is too toxic. The United Nations recognizes being Black in America is an increased risk for premature birth. Arizona has a high incidence of infant mortality. A lot of our moms have premature birth. A lot of our moms are anemic. A lot of our moms do not have access to quality, healthy foods, and it's impacting their birth outcomes. And we also don't have a number of providers who are able to care for our women in the way that they need care that are culturally reflective. So I've engaged in this food action plan as a community member, as a professional, as an individual who is a person in our community that has a family, that's a mother. I'm up here because it's disheartening for me to have to come and speak before you to say that we need this in our community. Food is everyone's right. And since food is everyone's right, we shouldn't have the question of coming up here in defense of a 2025 South Phoenix food action plan. As a professional, it is my recommendation that you really look at all the key components in this food action plan and implement it as a good practice in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Lola will be followed by David Martinez.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Good afternoon. I want to echo what I just heard from Fatima Muhammad about the difficulties around the what we saw in social media. I am a community organizer in South Phoenix. I work with Mass Liberation Arizona, but I'm also a resident. I'm more of a resident than I am anything else. I've been there since 1985. I know food scarcity from a very specific positionality of just being a constituent, a person who just grew up there and doesn't know any other way that South Phoenix has ever been. I'm here now in South Phoenix, and South Phoenix still looks the same to me. I was approached to be part of this because I am a community member, and I'm a community member first. I'm also a formerly incarcerated person, so the obstacles that I face in food access are specific to having been removed from society, struggling to find employment, struggling to find housing, and that's been my condition for, I've been home now 6 years, and the obstacles are still the same. So as a community member, I come here today, not as an organizer, not as a professional, but as somebody who has never been asked since 1985, what do we need in our community? Until recently. We sit in these spaces now and we talk about what we need based on our lived experience. We aren't able to name our challenges. No institution. This food action plan is the first time I've ever seen where an institution did not come and tell me what's wrong. I got to tell them what's wrong. And I got to invite change. I got to talk about what would restore us, what would make it easier for us to live, and what would be healthiest for us. I can name those things. I have autonomy. And so I think it's super important as well that this is accessible. Again, like as someone who struggles to find housing, who struggles to find work, being able to attend the meetings that come with this food action plan is only possible because I get childcare, because there's food that's there available to us, so I'm not missing the opportunity to cook for my children. I've survived, and I say survived intentionally, 2 pregnancies in South Phoenix. Just what we were hearing before about infant mortality.
Give us your final thought, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm in support, and I just wanted to say that to close. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. David Martinez will be followed by Erica Trapp.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is David Martinez with Vitalist Health Foundation, and we've been proud to support the project and support the food action plan, and we hope you as well. At Vitalist, we work to ensure, as part of a healthy community design, that health is in all policies, and this food action plan recognizes that the multiple influence that city programs and policies have on the health of residents and proactively embraces that sphere of influence. It's consistent with the city's citizen-approved general plan, which holds the health as one of 3 overarching priorities of the city. It also recognizes that a strong food system is strong throughout, from growing to composting, and this plan recognizes that. We often, in the food world, see discussions focus, for good reason, on solely food access, but this plan fully embraces the impact of food on all of our lives. We applaud the plan because it encompasses many elements of the food system, from growing to distribution to food loss, and the measures are reasonable and reflect the complexity of the food system. The resourceful development of the action plan that Roseanne has leveraged using existing several conversations to gather input and data for this. It includes the Maricopa County Food Assessment, the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, and Valley of the Sun United Way. And we applaud especially the focus on South Phoenix and Maryville for enhanced community engagement through partnerships. It really emphasized the disproportionate impact of a dysfunctional food system on residents of these areas. So we support the adoption of this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Erica will be followed by Penny Alley Taylor.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Trapp, and I'm here on behalf of Salt River Project. Salt River Project is in support of this plan and has made a commitment to work closely with the city to identify any available water resources, water rights that can be used to move forward with supplying the lands with water, and also to provide recommendations on infrastructure that could be used in order to provide farmland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for making sure we protect our agricultural roots and use those resources. Penny will be followed by David Hill.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Penny Alley Taylor, and today I'm here representing the Phoenix Environmental Quality and Sustainability Committee. I just wanted to let you know that the committee had the information presented to us. We reviewed all of the materials, and with that, the committee unanimously supported this effort. There's a letter in your materials signed by the chairman of the committee, Colin Tetra, with that reflected position of our committee. We hope that the suggestions within this plan will be incorporated into the city department's day-to-day applications of what they do. This is a really smart plan, and we hope that the city will continue to support its work. Thank you.
Thank you. David will be followed by Timothy Amlaw.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is David Hill. I manage the on-site community garden at Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix. I'm here today as a representative of Maricopa County Food System Coalition, MARCO for short, in support of the 2025 Food Action Plan. The mission of MARCO is to support and grow a local food system that is equitable, healthy, sustainable, and thriving. Among our core values, we strive to create equal access to quality, affordable, and culturally appropriate food while also supporting the physical and mental health and well-being of all residents. The food system we're growing supports the current population without compromising future generations. It acknowledges responsible stewardship of our natural resources, particularly of our unique desert ecology. It also recognizes the resilience that lies at the heart of our community, environment, and economy. Just as importantly, we are growing a food system that empowers the community and inspires innovation. Several years ago, MARCO obtained, with sponsorship from the City of Phoenix, grant funds from the Gila River Indian community in order to research and develop a comprehensive community food assessment for the city and our region. Many of the recommendations, goals, and strategies found in this proposed food action plan seem to be derived from information gleaned in that community food assessment. The City of Phoenix Food Action Plan represents, in a sense, the community food assessment put into action and made real for the benefit of all the residents of Phoenix. Ambitious and forward-thinking, detailed and comprehensive, the Food Action Plan represents the best and most complete plan that anyone has to date proposed for enabling all of us to grow the equitable, healthy, sustainable, and thriving food system that MARCO and its many partnering entities envision for Phoenix and Metropolis. We urge you to heartily to adopt the 2025 Food Action Plan in its entirety. You can count on MARCO as an energetic partner for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Timothy will be followed by Fatima Said.
Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Amlaw. I'm the president and CEO of Pure Harvest Foods. And ironically, about 6 years ago, I had a massive heart attack, and I was a diabetes sufferer, about 80 pounds heavier. And I went on a vegetable diet, and my A1Cs and everything are all in control. And that's how our company got started. We are basically a design, engineering, and manufacturing and operator of indoor farm systems. And I worked in Phoenix for the last 6 years looking at all the issues of zoning and building indoor farm systems. And I can tell you that this, and we've looked across the country because we're not just in Phoenix in our operations, but this is the most comprehensive plan that I've seen any city has put together, and I would fully endorse the complete passing of this concept. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fatima will be followed by Shelley Dennis.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Fatima Saeed, and I work with the Mass Liberation Project of Arizona, where we primarily serve formerly incarcerated folks and brown and black folks in South Phoenix. So South Phoenix has one of the worst accesses to food, if not the worst access to food. And as we know, food is closely related to health. And I would like to share some facts from the Health Impact Assessment, Roosevelt School District 2015. The rates of diabetes and obesity-related hospitalizations for residents living in the study area are almost twice as high than residents of the country as a whole. Diabetes hospitalizations disproportionately impact brown and black residents. Black residents are 3.5 times more likely to be hospitalized for diabetes than white residents living in South Phoenix. Black residents are 9 times as likely to be hospitalized for asthma-related complications than white residents in the same study area, and twice as likely to be hospitalized than black residents of Maricopa County as a whole. The Food Action Plan is important and needs to be continued because it is different. It's different in that it is intentionally interactive by being community-oriented. Here, South Phoenix community members get together and use their experiences to educate themselves about the food system and each other. Normally, we see a top-down approach. Here, this action is a ground-up program where we uplift our most vulnerable in the community. 2 weeks ago, I was sworn in, appointed to the South Mountain Village Planning Committee. And a part of the reason why I came in was to look at issues like this. And even though I only recently was able to take part in one training, I saw how beneficial it was and how it empowered the South Phoenix community members. I would love to continue to attend and would like to invite you all to our March 18th event with Leah Penniman. And I have some flyers to pass out to the council members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will grab those from you. Shelley will be followed by Eric O'Neill.
Hello, my name is Dr. Shelley Dennis, and I am Faculty Chair of Health Sciences and Sustainability at Rio Salado College, one of 10 community colleges in Maricopa County. I'm speaking today both as a current educator and scholar and a former physician. As a former physician, I can tell you that unhealthy diet is the single biggest risk factor for premature death in the United States today, and that healthy nutrition is necessary for normal childhood development. Access to healthy food is determined largely around lines of race and class, and because of that, some people argue that possibly poor people or people of color simply make bad decisions because they see nutrition as a personal choice. But research suggests that when presented with the opportunities, people of color and poor people do choose healthy, fresh foods. It turns out that public policy establishes the context within which individual decisions are made. Goal 1 resituates that context for the citizens in Phoenix, giving them more and better opportunities. As an educator, I oversee a sustainable food systems program which serves over 140 students who aspire to self-employment or employment in the local sustainable food economy. Combined, goals 2 and 3 foster the economic environment and commitment to local culinary culture that my students will need if they're going to succeed. Goals 4 and 5 address food system sustainability and resilience, thus making excellent use of Phoenix's natural resources while keeping its citizens fed. The citizens of Phoenix need your support in the form of sound policy with public health in mind in order for them to obtain reliable access to healthy food. My students are eager to contribute their passions and talents in sustainable foods for the purposes of creating a local food culture with a distinctive Phoenix flavor. The 2025 Phoenix Action Plan meets those needs, and I humbly request you to support this plan. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Eric will be followed by Joe Larios.
Assalamu alaikum, Mayor, Council. My name is Eric O'Neill. I'm here representing Tiger Mountain Foundation and to endorse the Food Action Plan, something that is needed not only for South Phoenix and Maryville, but for the entire city. The benefit of the equitable engagement that the plan will present is it works every day with Tiger Mountain as we work with people who come out of prison to prevent recidivism. We work with the youth, especially at-risk youth in South Phoenix, to prevent them from and give them other options than prison. We intentionally and interactively engage the elderly with the youth, commercial and corporate companies, as well as student unions and other student bodies to come out to the garden to help in building the community, to building access to equitable and healthy foods, and to learn the technology of growing, and to understand and learn not only the dirt that the food grows from, but the food that you eat. I don't think lots of people have a relationship with food. I think the relationship is just the putting it in the mouth and maybe tasting the spice, but not understanding the nature of the plant that you're putting in the food or that you're putting in your mouth and what it brings to your body, both mentally and physically every day. I would also welcome, encourage, and challenge the City Council to come out to either the Garden of Tomorrow or Spaces of Opportunity to take part in one of the community events and engagements that we have every second and fourth Saturday, so you can get a firsthand experience and real life feel for what we do in the gardens and what the gardens present to us in the community. With that, I say that myself, Tiger Mountain Foundation, and the South Phoenix community support the Food Action Plan.
Thank you. Joe will be followed by Sarah Dolan. Okay. Sarah would be up next, followed by Gabe Gardner.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah, and I am the general manager of Blue Sky Organic Farms. I'm also the vice president of Sun Produce Co-op of small farmers in Maricopa County. I'm a farmer. I haven't heard a farmer yet speak. A commercial farmer. I mean, I know of Tiger Mountain and Spaces of Opportunity. But I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. Although we are in the West Valley, we are a 35-acre farm, and we struggle with the loss of land. And although we are currently looking for additional land, as we will lose more than 2/3 of our farm within the coming 18 months, I encourage this plan to also take into consideration the land that you grow on, because you cannot create a farm out of any piece of dirt. It has to be the right type of soil, and it has to be the right type of water. And so, although this is a fantastic start, there needs to be some understanding of what it takes to farm. There also needs to be an understanding of what a farm brings to this community. Currently, we are selling about 1,600 to 1,600 transactions a week through 5 farmers markets, our store, and a small CSA that we do. We have a payroll annually of $680,000. We employ 23 full-time people and 13 part-time people. We do 5 markets each week, and we've donated $65,000 worth of produce to St. Mary's Food Bank in the last year and a half. We do this because we love farming and we love our community. Small farms are not doing this to become rich. We do it because we love the people that we live around and that we work around. We value the health of our community, and that is also comes right back to the dirt, because if you don't have good quality soil, you don't have good quality food. So again, I'm in support of this, and I encourage any of you to go to your local small farms and see what it really takes to farm.
Thank you. Gabe will be followed by Francisco Avalos.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Thank you for your time. I'm the Food Programs Director for Local First Arizona. As you know, Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the nation, and Maricopa County is the fastest growing county in the United States. Local First Arizona is also the largest business coalition in the country, and we're excited for our future. Much of the work we do at Local First is centered around the diverse array of local food the agriculture and hospitality economies of Arizona produce. Local food is a major driver of the Arizona economy. With the growth Phoenix is currently experiencing, it's hard to imagine that access to healthy food produced in the state could be an issue for families, children, and elderly in our city. Our agricultural heritage is too strong for this to occur. Investment in the community-driven Phoenix Food Action Plan represents a major step forward on addressing these concerns and creating long-term solutions to health, hunger, food sovereignty, and food security issues. Leading the charge on this work is Roseanne Albright from the Office of Environmental Programs with help from Marco. These leaders have brought together stakeholders, large and small, to understand what is needed to create meaningful, substantive, effective change for the good of all our residents. Local First is proud to have facilitated some of the necessary conversations needed to convene all these stakeholders. Additionally, our Buy Local campaigns have been opening new paths, driving revenue, and creating jobs in the areas of the city that need it most. Simply put, local food is good for our economies and good for our communities. We ask that the city lead the efforts to adapt zoning codes and ordinances that affect food production and access. Removal of these barriers will create new opportunities for jobs and reduce food insecurity. Community kitchens, food hubs, business incubators, and ag tech are all examples of efforts that can satisfy both of these needs. Food bonds us all. Our sense of place, security, and connection to one another is built through food. The 2025 Phoenix Food Action Plan is a critical part of ensuring the connection that food brings to all our lives is protected and developed. We fully encourage your support of this plan.
Thank you. Francisco will be followed by Diane Barker.
Buenos dias. My name is Francisco Avalos, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Valley of the Sun United Way. So Valley of the Sun United Way has been doing quite a bit of work in this space around ending and addressing hunger in our community, from building community gardens to engaging community to investing in community health workers throughout Phoenix. Our goal is to ensure that all people have access to healthy food, including the most vulnerable populations, which include pregnant women, children, and elders as the three most impacted communities or populations that are being impacted by having access to healthy, nutritious food. Our goal is to ensure that we have a robust food system that provides access to fresh food, to health and nutrition education, and to increase the capacity of local residents for sustained long-term solutions, in addition to supporting local food production to support our economy and our underserved farmers. The 2025 Food Action Plan is the most comprehensive food action plan that we've seen to date, and it is drafted with the full intention to address food insecurity here. I'd like to share with you a brief story of a resident who has benefited from spaces of opportunity. She moved to Mexico, bought a house down there, and spent quite a bit of time down there. In that time, there was farmers who would come through her neighborhood every few days to sell like the ugly produce that, grocery stores won't buy off the back of their truck. When she was there, she dropped a high blood pressure medicine. She dropped one of her diabetes pills, but she had to return due to family conditions. Upon her return, she's back on those pills because she does not have access to healthy food in her community. And so I urge you to adopt and support these issues because our families' nutrition depends on it. And on behalf of the United Way, we want to ensure that this continues to provide that access for our families.
Thank you. Diane will be followed by Leonard Clark.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am here because of food. And I came out here to Arizona 3 decades ago. I've lived in 7 different cities, and most of the time in Phoenix. And when I'm looking here at the food deserts, this was designed for Maricopa County, but it says that Phoenix has 3/4 of the food desert. So also, I agree with Elder Williams is the fact that we need to look at all of the districts presently. I am in District 7, and I'm very interested, I have been for years, interested in the flourishing of South Phoenix because I witnessed at the time getting on the wrong bus some really decrepit housing, and I couldn't understand because South Phoenix has some of the most beautiful trees. I've talked to people that love living there. Why it was like that? Well, then I look at the history that you provided from this. There was a flood in 1891, and it drove a lot of people out. We're in a low-lying area. Here and around the world, floods destroy communities more than any natural disaster. So we're fortunate now to understand more about drainage, and we're going to need that. In regards to coming here, when I said about food, I came out here from Florida. I had been in real estate. I didn't have a license. I took minimum wage jobs. I lived in affordable housing. I took the bus, and I went to the only natural food store that I knew of when I got sick because I had no health insurance. And so after, I ended up really not wanting an automobile. Not only was it an extra expense, but the point of it, I had gotten a lot healthier. We need this. I stand in support, and I can say, Mayor, you can lead a horse to water, make it drink, make the right choice to eat these foods, okay?
Thank you. Leonard Clark will be followed by Paris Masek.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm very proud of the work I've seen that you've done up here and the beautiful community organizations and individuals to finally seeing, as one of the people who came up and testified before you, that you're actually taking in, you know, you can have consultants talk all day and what we need to do better, but you're actually doing something. I'm hopefully going to see you all vote in favor of it. I understand if you don't. But we have to look at everything. One thing I like about this is the connection it has to man-made global climate change. And a lot of our kids in the inner city of Phoenix haven't heard about Greta Thunberg. And maybe we could work on that. But the thing is, we don't have to truck in using gas, putting more carbon dioxide into the air. We have the most beautiful farms here. I'm not sure if it was Roy Rogers' son who one time commented on a show once called on Channel 5, the Rita Davenport show, that we have some of the most beautiful soil on the banks of the Salt River. But I don't go enough. I'm blessed to have enough to eat. You know, there's tests on there, YouTube. You can find out how alkaline your soil it is or how acidic it is with simple household materials. You can look at the coloring. And I just want to finish. We have to also look at in a global context of why this is so critical. The president's budget would cut food assistance for millions. It's going to radically restructure SNAP, what was formerly known as food stamps, going to cut by 30% over the next 10 years, drastically affecting the elderly, people of low income, people low income with children. And so what you're doing is vital because while I see some corporations out there that don't seem to care. I also see corporations like SRP who've been here saying that they're trying to help. So I would encourage the other corporations to do this. And finally, a book, Forks Over Knives, plant-based diet. You don't need to eat meat. You can do it with plants. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker today is Paris.
Good afternoon, Mayor Gallego and City Council members. My name is Dr. Paris Masek. I'm also president of Green on Purpose, which is a small food hub operating here in central Arizona. My work, academic and physical-wise, is involved with local food systems, and indigenous food. I'm greatly in support of the Food Action Plan, but as Sarah Dolan said from Blue Skies, it's a starting point. You see very few farmers here. You do not see too many distributors here, and it needs to go forward from here. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I've worked in central Missouri, I've worked in Los Angeles, and I've been here since 1992. And this is the first plan that I've seen that has some really opportunity to make an impact and reach out beyond just the scope of bureaucracy, rules, regulations, codes, everything else. So it has real possibilities, but it is still just a starting point. So I encourage the passage of the Food Action Plan, and I'm in full support of it. Don't stop there.
Thank you. That concludes our cards wishing to speak. We have 5 additional residents who have filled out cards in support of the plan. Councilmember Garcia.
First of all, I want to thank all the speakers who came out, and to the Office of Environmental Programs, congratulations. I think process matters, and the fact that you've been able to do this outreach and bring folks together that need this. As representing District 8, if you look at the food desert maps, about close to half of our district is a food desert, and so we are in desperate need of this action. And I hope that we continue to work together, and please let our office know we're in full support of the entire plan, every bullet. Let us know how we can further support, and I'll be obviously voting yes on this item.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Councilwoman Pastor.
So really appreciate the good work. Just in general, a general fact in the United States, we probably shouldn't have people going hungry because we're the richest country, and that we're sitting here today talking about food deserts is sad. And I believe that we have food deserts in everyone's district. And so I think it's as quickly as possible we can expand into other districts to really save lives. So I really appreciate the work. What I want to ask is probably, I don't know if I'll get an answer, but once this passes, I want to know what the next steps are, because I did hear the agriculture community saying, let's get moving. And I also know that when we had a dialogue, we were talking about building more community gardens and being able to plant more citrus trees and be able to look at this as a bigger collective. And so I'm already probably 10 steps ahead of you guys as to, I've already kind of identified land in my district where I think citrus trees could go, a community garden could go. So I want to know the timeline as we vote today and pass it and move it. And I think probably every one of these districts would like to know a timeline in their area, or could help you identify the spaces that are needed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I can answer. Our immediate next steps that we've actually already started is working on identifying potential available vacant land that the city owns, in particular park space, that could be used for urban orchards or community gardens. So we've already started that process. And then we'll also be working with planning department and some of our partners. As a matter of fact, right now, through our work with ASU, Local First, and City of Tempe, we're evaluating the opportunities for what mechanisms we can use to preserve land. And in our TII subcommittee, Councilwoman Stark mentioned that there's a possibility of potentially a general plan amendment. So those are all those things that we need to start, that we've already started working on, and those would be the most immediate things over the next 3 months.
Wonderful, thank you. Awesome. Today in Maricopa County, 1 in 5 children experience limited access or uncertain access to food. I'm glad we're moving forward with addressing that. We have to do better for all of our residents, but especially our youngest. Access to healthy food can really be a great predictor for the rest of your life of good health outcomes, and we want to make sure we invest in our youngest residents. We are also, as you mentioned, answering something our voters told us in the general plan process was a priority, that we had to create a healthier community and address the fact that we have 43 food deserts in our community. So today we are moving forward with a great blueprint. Thank you to Roseanne Albright and the Office of Environmental Programs for moving at the speed of trust and working with the community, putting in countless hours to meet with residents and stakeholders to thoughtfully and carefully develop this action plan. Thank you to the Maricopa County Food System Coalition, the Health Improvement Partnership of Maricopa County, Valley of the Sun United Way, Vitalists, the communities of practice in South Phoenix and Maryville, and the many other partners who have come together to move this plan forward. We appreciate your partnership and know that the work is just beginnings. I look forward to supporting the adoption of the plan. Any additional comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio,
No.
Garcia,
Yes.
Nowakowski,
Yes.
Pastor,
Yes.
Stark,
Yes.
Waring, Williams,
Yes.
Guardado,
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 7-2. We next move to item 54, which is lease and redevelop. We next move to item 54, which is the lease and redevelopment of city-owned property at 1414 East Jefferson Street.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Waring.
Yes, I think Jim Bennett's here, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about this because I was on the subcommittee that heard this. There was some questions about it at the time. I've gotten more information. I think most people have too. But I just want Jim up there to sort of check my homework. But my understanding is we're talking about leasing out this property for multi-use, but this property was originally purchased by the airport because people live there and it was noisy, right? The noise abatement program. So we purchased the property, which is not really anywhere close to the airport, but apparently is within the contours that allow that purchase, which is fine. But then they come to us and they want to lease it for housing, at least in part. And I didn't really understand that component. I didn't know that background until just the other day. But it seems kind of odd to me that we have a whole program set up to get people out of the noise area, purchase these properties. I think it's a $221 million program. The passenger fee at the airport funds it, or at least help funds it. And then we're going to turn right back around and put housing there. The FAA initially told us we couldn't, but now we're going to. That just seems like a big waste of time. I think, as with other properties like that Garfield thing, we need to get this stuff off our books and be done with it. We don't need to own all these properties, and the airport doesn't need to own these properties. If Jim's has the response, I'm happy to have it. If I'm factually inaccurate in the summary of what was presented, because we didn't have that information at the subcommittee, I think we were going to get a report sometime in the future, but now that we have this information, I just don't see why we're going through this exercise if we're going to go turn right back around and petition the FAA to put houses where we bought properties so there wouldn't be people living there. That just doesn't make any sense to me when I say it out loud like that. I'm happy to have a response, or I'll just leave that lie. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I mean, leasing it is better than just, I guess, having it sit there, but selling it, I think, would be better and just be done with it. I recognize we'd have to go through a process with the FAA to do that. I think it's well worth it. Just cut our interest in properties around the city that apparently is accomplishing nothing because the original goal is not going to be accomplished by definition. So, thank you, Mayor, for indulging me. I appreciate it.
Jim Bennett.
Mayor and members of the council, Mr. Waring's remarks were generally correct. This property was acquired as part of the voluntary acquisition program that the city initiated many years ago. And it was within the boundaries, the northern most boundaries of that area that was deemed to be noise impacted. And so the owners of these properties voluntarily sold their land to the airport for compatibility purposes. And then you'll recall that for about the past 4.5 or so years, we were undergoing a land reuse strategy with the community, so a community-based land reuse strategy. The council approved the community's vision for how they would like to see the area redeveloped. Part of that vision included the introduction in a core area around Herrera School for some additional residential, but then also this area that we're talking about up here today along Washington, also some residential in terms of kind of a mixed-use residential with some retail and multifamily associated with that. That plan was submitted to the FAA. The FAA rejected the introduction of residential in the core area around the Herrera School, but they did condition the introduction of residential, as long as it's mixed use, up in the area that we're discussing today along Washington. And there were conditions placed on us if we were to introduce this type of development up there along Washington.
Thank you, Councilman Waring.
All I would say then is if noise really isn't as big a problem as apparently we're saying because we're purchasing properties up there, then we should scale back that footprint. Why wouldn't we? It's either a problem or it isn't. It's either so big of a problem that people who use the airport, correct me if I'm wrong, are helping subsidize these purchases, not wholly, but at least in part. Whether the fee has increased in the last 20 years or not, it's still part of it. You could scale back the fee then if you don't need to be doing some of this. So I don't understand why we don't shave off a couple streets then, make it further south, make it closer to the airport then, if it's not really a problem. If it's not really a problem, we don't need to be buying properties up there then. So it's just a thought. I don't know how, if this was a debate setting, it's not, but if it was a debate setting or we were trying to explain this to constituents, I don't know what they'd say as to how this makes sense. And my understanding was the FAA from you rejected this the first time flat, and then when you petitioned again, you know, they said, okay, not in the one area that you mentioned, but this area, okay, you know, we're willing to listen. But please keep in mind too, all of this takes staff time. We got another item on the agenda that, you know, we have to petition for staff time for certain important issues. Let's transfer some of the people who are working on this to something else that apparently has more merit, because by definition, if we put housing there, we're saying that the original need to have this blocked off to buy these houses is just not necessary after all. We changed our mind. So again, just food for thought, but it seems like the less of this kind of activity we're doing, the more we could do something that's actually productive.
And Mayor, to Councilman Waring, if I may, and you know, the noise contours over time have shifted a little bit. So this is technically outside of what we refer to as the 65 noise contour, which is the most sensitive noise area. But as the FAA and their conditional approval of development noted here, noise contours do shift over time. And at some point, they cautioned the city that noise may once again influence this area, and that the FAA would not be responsible for any future mitigation efforts in that area.
Councilman Waring.
And then, well, I guess I'm now sorry to belabor it, but I would say then that speaks to the, then don't do it. Because if what you're saying is the potential is there for more planes to be in this area or louder planes to be in this area or whatever, which is what I think your statement, if you put it in layman's terms, implies, then that's just, by putting people living there, that's just the opportunity to have more people complain to the airport about noise. Because one thing I found is people move right next to the airport and then complain about the planes, despite the fact that the airport's been there for however long it's been there. I know wherever I speak, I live by an airport myself, but we actually get complaints about an airport that's been there since the 40s when the house has only been there since 70s or 60s or whatever. But it's just the way it is. But if we want to avoid that, and we've made that claim in other circumstances with other uses, we don't want to have this use there because then houses are going to be built there and then those people are going to complain. We've had that with a mine in my district where people moved right next to a mine and then complain about, you know, mine-related activities. Well, the mine was there in the 50s and your house was built in the 90s. What am I supposed to say to that? This kind of falls in that same category, but we're opening ourselves up to that. If what you're saying is the noise could get worse there, the FAA is warning us of that fact. We already said it's too loud in the first place, but now we're putting housing there. I just don't understand it. Thank you.
Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you. I'm really excited for this. I think if previous council member Goodwood could be here, he'd be ecstatic jumping up and down. I don't think he could jump up and down now, but we've been pushing for this for a while. I myself made a trip to DC to try to get us to be able to build even further south. I think we're correcting a presumption that the noise contour wouldn't allow people to be in a certain place. Conditions have shifted, and I'm excited to bring the much needed housing back to District 8, so thank you for the work.
Councilwoman Williams.
Jim, how long is the lease? I guess is my first question.
Mayor, to Councilwoman Williams, I would maybe yield to my partner over here, Chris Mackey with CED, concerning that question.
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, it is, the request for proposal doesn't identify the exact lease term. As we've gone out to the community, we've identified the standard term of 50 years, but that could potentially be negotiable depending on the term, being that it's located so far off the runway. So we'll work with Mr. Bennett on that term as it comes in.
That concerns me because, as you just said, the contours can change, they can shift. And as you are reorganizing the airport, that could have an influence on this. So I'm hoping when you put that out, you notified whoever was wanting to lease it that that could change, and they cannot complain. They have to release and give the land back, the ownership and the rights to it, to the airport. So did that happen?
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, we can absolutely include that as part of the request for proposal, and should we have a good proposal to bring forward to the council, we can include that as part of any lease agreements or agreements that come forward for executed by the applicant to the city council. So we're just at the point now where we would issue the RFP. We can make that very, very clear in the RFP that we issue, and then also bring executed documents back to the council should we get that far.
And I think it's very important that it includes the noise, because there will be noise, there's no doubt about it. And in some cases, there will be vibrations and whatever else follows large planes. And to make sure that's in there, that they are aware and we are not responsible.
Yes, ma'am, we'll make sure all that's included.
Thank you.
Councilman Waring.
Yeah, and I'll just say this, to Councilman Garcia's point, and anybody else who worked on this, I'm not criticizing the project in any way. It's more the process that got here. I'd love to see this in the private sector and then build whatever the community wants or will support and so forth. That's all fine. So it's not anything about that. It's just more, this is a lot of hoops to jump through to do something the community wants. So they're unnecessary in my mind, given what I just said.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Is that Councilman DeCiccio?
Yes, it is. Thank you. No, I totally agree with what Jim is saying here. I mean, but if you go back, and if I could drive the point home, it's like you acquire property, wondering what even we paid for this thing, and then also we go back out and do the same thing that we told the individuals that we wanted the property for. It's just not logical, and it just seems like a waste of money. So if you really, I mean, if you analyze the history of this, the history of itself tells you that, you know, it's back to buy high and sell low. But I'm always in favor of putting land into production. I'd like to see what they come back with, what type of lease. You're probably going to end up having to be 55 years is my guess. But even with a 55-year lease, what if the airport needs that property in 5 years? You're going to have to see what kind of out clauses are in that RFP, which I assume we're going to build into it. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilman DeCiccio, we will build into it the term that we negotiate on the lease, and then all of the traditional terms that are standard in an aviation land lease.
Well, I don't know what that means, but at the end of the day, I'm guessing you're going to have some outs that you're going to have to do there, and that means we're going to have to buy the property back, if that's the case, because if they end up coming in, just giving you a thought here, I don't mind moving forward with this, but we could get ourselves in a pickle in the future because you're going to end up negotiating a buyout clause on here, and the buyout clause is going to include whatever capital expenses have been put into the property, my guess. So I'm just eager to hear what you have to come back with. But I will be supporting it because I do believe we should always be putting property into production, but I'm going to want to see what the terms are of this.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Councilman DeCiccio just mentioned by buying the property back. So we're leasing the property. What are we buying back?
Mayor, to
is that for me or?
No, I'm asking staff because I'm trying to get clarity on what we're going to buy back.
Okay. Mayor, to Councilwoman Pastor, we would still be owning the land.
Right.
So I'm thinking Councilman DeCiccio is probably referring to the unamortized investments that the developer has put on the property should we need to take over the property for aviation purposes. But one of the unique features of this site location that was identified in the community land reuse study is, given its location, yes, it is impacted by noise. That's why it was originally acquired. But its location is such that we, as at the airport, would not need it for future airport development. So we just need to ensure that when it is redeveloped for community purposes, that there are the appropriate provisions in the agreements that protect the airport from future noise or non-compatible land use issues.
And then I have two other questions. I heard 50-year lease. What's the minimum and what's the max of years in the lease? In the lease, because I'm just curious, because could we go to 25, or what is the? That's why I'm asking what the minimum and the max is. And then I'm hearing now 55. So.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, when you are doing development on a leased parcel of land, anybody who's lending on that parcel of land to build the development looks at the term at which you hold control over that land. On a traditional development that's there really is no bank that will lend on a non-aviation related use. Now, hangar would be different or something, but something that's off airport, there really are no lenders who would lend for less than 50 years, because you've got to be able to build the project, pay back the money to the loan, have enough time to be able to sell it and make a profit, and then they look at who's going to sell it next. So they really run that math through to see how long it lasts. Typically, the FAA doesn't look at leases that are longer than 50 years, and that is what, as Mr. Bennett and I have done projects together, as I've done projects in my former career, that is what we've always held to as that 50-year time frame. In an area where it's an area of property that this airport won't ever need again, for the right project, as the panel seats, as Mr. Bennett and I spoke, it could be considered, depending on the project, a term that may be longer than the 50 years, and that would have to come to council for its approval. Any term would have to come to council for its approval.
Okay, and my third one is that I would like to put a request in that the windows are triple pane or noise, what has been placed in the La Mipas and Campito area. I would like for those windows, or what is considered noise, I guess, noise abatement from windows. So.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor will make sure that's included in the RFP.
An extra insulation from Councilwoman Williams.
We're building green, noise resistant. I purchased a condo 5 blocks away from this site, knowing the location of the airport, and felt very good about the noise impact and the ability to live in a proximity to so many amenities, including the light rail. So I would say, as someone who has lived in the area, you can responsibly build housing in this community. In the answer to, we did acquire it through a voluntary program related to noise, but I would say that several things have changed since that time. We have a very different council now, and this is a council that has prize going out in the community and talking with residents about what they would like to see. I want to credit Jordan Felt and Courtney Carter, who have spent years out in the community. I have had the opportunity to attend many of the meetings, although not as many as they, and have heard from the residents that they do want additional housing as well as mixed-use projects, and this is very consistent with what the residents said they want. During the years since we acquired the property, we also should recognize that there's been significant advancements in airplane design. Our aviation director, Jim Bennett, did mention that the noise contours have changed. We should credit Phoenix, Arizona engineers at Honeywell, who have designed better engines that are much quieter. Councilwoman Pastor and I just had an opportunity to meet with the CEO of Southwest Airlines, who did tell us, as they acquire new planes, that quieter planes have been a priority for them. So I am hopeful we will continue to see advancements in that area, and that the noise contours will get even more narrow so that we can have more and more housing in this area. This is also a project that's very consistent with the needs of our community. Up to 50% of the units will be affordable and workforce. These are affordable workforce units on light rail near our downtown. We need those units. I'm proud that our city is taking our assets and asking, how can we help create more affordable units? We live in the first state in the country to preempt cities from requiring affordable units. This is an opportunity for us to go out and find a way to incentivize those units. So from my perspective, this is accomplishing many of our city goals at once. We are getting vacant land in good use in a way that is consistent with the city and our needs for affordable and workforce housing. So I look forward to supporting this item and want to thank everyone who attended community meetings, who spoke at community meetings, and who led to today's proposal. Any additional comments? Councilmember Garcia.
I want a motion to pass item 44, or 54, sorry.
Second.
And I believe we do have a motion from Councilwoman Williams.
Okay.
And a second. Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski. Yes. Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 8-1. We next move to item 56, International Fire Code Amendments. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Item 56 is for ordinance G6677, an ordinance authorizing clarifications, adjustments, and amendments to the 2018 International Fire Code with Phoenix amendments and moving the Phoenix Fire Prevention Fee Schedule from the body of the code to Appendix A of the Phoenix City Code, Chapter 15, where it is currently located, and adopting the revised fee schedule.
I would move approval as revised.
We have a motion and a second. Any Councilman Waring?
A question for staff.
We have a question for staff.
We'll have Executive Assistant Fire Chief Scott Walker will come forward.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it. So this is a cleanup for something that passed last summer.
Mayor, members of council, Councilman Waring, that is correct. In 2018, approximately July, the council approved the adoption of the 2018 International Fire Code. Since then, the deployment of that, we realized there's areas we want to make sure was clear to our community, our business community that uses the code, and so that's really what this is about, is clearing up those making clarifications within the code that was approved in 2018.
I think, Mayor, there's a bill at the legislature that addresses some of that code. Is that right, about the restaurants and the 300 people and so forth? I see a couple of people nodding. So I think I'm right. I think I'm right about that. What happens if that bill passes? I mean, then what?
So, Mayor, members of council, the specific item referring to is House Bill 2313. This is, we've been working with the legislature, representative legislature, as well as the Restaurant Association to really better define that bill. Right now, that bill, as it is moving through the system, would only impact one code provision. That code provision is for the requirement of retroactive installation of fire sprinklers in basically bars, restaurant occupancies that have an occupancy load of over 300. We've identified less than 40 of those occupants in the city of Phoenix. The code currently reads that those occupancies would be required, and our policy has, as we worked with them, that requirement is a 5-year implementation strategy. Currently, the bill, if it were to pass in its current state, would not allow us to apply the retroactive requirement to those approximately 40 businesses in the city of Phoenix.
Because, Mayor, if I recall, and I didn't realize it'd been as long as it's been. I thought it was last year. You worked something out with the Restaurant Association, but now there's a bill that would wipe that out and just say you can't enforce that deal, correct? I mean, that's, I put it in layman's terms.
Member Councilman Waring, yes, we had worked over a year ago, myself, the fire chief, the assistant manager, Mr. Honey, met with the Restaurant Association to try to work, accommodate their needs, something that would still allow us to protect the community, but that did not obviously satisfy that, and so they're going down this path.
So it sounds like you didn't really have a deal after all. If I go by that. I guess so does this affect that? Because I would have concerns passing something, that there's something in the works right now that could completely wipe out part of it regardless. Should we wait and then adjust to what the state law does? We're always doing stuff here to adjust to state law, right? I mean, we have, after the session, it seems like every year we have a bunch of stuff where we have to adjust to what the legislature did. Doesn't that make sense, or am I missing something?
So at this point, the mayor, members of council, Councilman Waring, the item is in the code as it is adopted. As far as a requirement. The House bill would basically limit our ability to enforce that. And so we would never be able to enforce something that would be against the state law anyway. Right. So we could leave that in the code as it is today, not enforce that by policy is what we would do.
So we just leave it as is?
That would be our recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call.
DeCiccio.
Oh, Mayor? Oh.
Councilman DeCiccio.
Yeah, thank you. I'm always concerned when we do these retroactivity clauses, especially for those 40 restaurants that are there. I've always had an issue with that part of it. And just like Jim as well, I am concerned that, there's no reason for us to wait. I mean, it doesn't hurt us to wait until we find out what happens with the legislature. You're less than 30 days away from that. And just to keep something into a code after we're told we can't do that doesn't make a lot of sense. So, I'm generally pretty supportive of pretty much what fire does on this. The retroactivity clause is what I'm concerned about, and the extra burden that puts onto everybody. So I'm going to be voting no on this one, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. And before we continue with roll call, Chief Walker, will you just give us a summary of what today's vote does?
Yes, Mayor, members of council. So today we have two parts. It's the clarifications and amendments. Primarily, this is focused on just cleaning up language to make it very clear to our business community when they come and apply for permits, what permits they may need, how that would apply. We also moved the fee schedule out of the code and made it an amendment to the code or attachment to the code. This is more in line with what the Plan Development does with the building department fee schedule. This also allows us to have a code and move a code forward or make impacts to code, and then separately make impacts to the fee schedule. Obviously, the fee schedule has a posting requirement for 60 days and a 15-day on our social media posts, so it makes it easier really for us to modify that if it were needed. We'll say the fee schedule that is being presented includes some fees that may went up, but it actually has as many that have went down, so it really is almost a net neutral impact to our community as far as the fees themselves. So those are the two items that we have presented to you.
Mayor?
And just a second, the vote related to the fire sprinklers has already happened.
Mayor, members of council, that
so
is
that
correct.
Is already in the code.
That is correct.
Okay, so today's vote would not be impact, because it is already in the code, what happening at the legislature will move forward regardless, but there is no reason to wait because we have already voted on the fire sprinklers.
Mayor, members of council, that is correct. As the code is adopted today, that requirement is in there. Nothing that we have presented to you would impact that in any way.
Okay. So we'd be reducing some
Mayor?
fees in certain areas that we would not be able to reduce without today's vote. Yes, Councilman DeCiccio.
Oh, then knowing that, I did not know that, Mayor. Thank you for asking that question as well, too, because the code in itself is a good code. It's just the retroactivity part that bothered me that was in there, and I didn't realize it wasn't going to have an impact on that, so I'd be supportive of this, Mayor. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Then should we start roll call again?
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 8-1. Thank you. We next move to item 57, National Vehicle Location Service Database.
I would move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Any council member comments? Roll call.
DeCiccio.
No.
Garcia.
No.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Stark. Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Guardado.
No.
Gallego.
Yes. Passes 5-3. Thank you. We next move to item 92, amend the city council for the loud party noise ordinance. We will begin with a staff report and welcome our Planning and Development Director, Alan Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This particular item is a proposed city code amendment to address loud party calls that the police department go on to within existing neighborhoods. I do have with me Assistant Chief Sean Conley and Jessica Rothschild from the police department as well for any additional questions. We do have a quick PowerPoint presentation that we will run through here. You'll recall back in January, the City Council approved a short-term rental registry for short-term rentals, which was allowed pursuant to state statute that was passed last year. At that time, we also had been working on this loud party ordinance and adding some additional teeth to it to help ensure that within our residential neighborhood areas, if there are noises that come up, whether or not they're done by a short-term rental within the neighborhood or regular residents, that we were adding some teeth to a tool that the police department can use, although it's on an infrequent basis, to address loud party issues. And so this proposed city code amendment does and strengthen that area. So it's generally applicable, meaning it doesn't just apply to short-term rentals. It's also anyone else that the police would go to, the officer would have the option to address, to issue a violation under this ordinance. It does add a requirement in there about, as part of that notice of violation, the new language it promotes 3 different potential fines that are maximums that could be done. So these aren't ones that if someone comes forward, they automatically get that fine. It's up to a maximum, and that is based upon information that the police department provides to an independent hearing officer that is not within the police department to look at and assess how much time was involved by the police to recover those costs that are spent on these loud party instances. And so the existing ordinance today has a $1,000 fine. What we're proposing is to add the $1,500 level and up to $2,000 for a third incident within a 12-month period. Again, these may go up to, and it's based upon cost recovery that the police department has to show to that independent hearing officer that they were out there multiple times, multiple officers were involved to necessitate that fine structure. So the changes that were compared to the Land Use and Livability Subcommittee recommendation, where it was a recommendation to approve it, but they asked us to address some additional issues. We now are proposing in the latest draft that came out from a memo from myself earlier this week that they would provide a notice to the person responsible party who got the citation, what was involved in terms of the police response to that. Description of the hearing procedures were added to the ordinance, stating that must be a person outside the police department who's the hearing officer, and then added criteria and a process to that. And then the hearing officer also, as stated, they can reduce that fine based upon the burden not being met by the police in terms of what that response rate is. With that, staff does recommend approval of the proposed amendment pursuant to the memo from February 27th. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any, Councilman Waring?
Alan, this is, thank you, Mayor. So this is not just B&Bs or anything like that. This is everybody, correct?
Mayor and Councilman Waring, that is correct.
And so if you have your kid's wedding reception in your backyard or something, this probably isn't you, sort of a one-up. This is repeat offenders that are sort of causing their neighbors a lot of anguish, if I had to summarize it.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, you are correct. This is something that in a typical process with the police department, they will go out and have a discussion. That noise is turned down and they address the issue. They're not involved anymore. These are the repeat offenders where they go out to continually that are causing noises within the community. And I would defer to the police if you have any more detailed, specific questions about it.
Does this, may I ask, Mayor, does this affect like a business that's some distance away? There is actually a restaurant in Scottsdale that the noise carries across Scottsdale Road into my district. Not much I can do about it because it's a Scottsdale business and it's on the weekends. I mean, I assume not, and obviously that's a bad example because it's a Scottsdale restaurant and it's affecting Phoenix residents. I'm sure it's also affecting Scottsdale residents, but it's definitely, I've heard about it from Phoenix residents. But I assume it's not that. Like if you're somewhere near a restaurant, it's not the same thing.
Mayor, Councilman Waring, you are correct that it does not apply to instances like a restaurant or a business. It is specifically to loud parties, gatherings, other events that are held, in those particular instances.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Mayor, that answer was on the record because it's a different, it's targeting a specific type of activity that the vast majority of Phoenicians are not going to be engaging in. But for those who are really, really bugging their neighbors on a really regular basis, I mean, that could really drive you nuts. And we just, we can't have it. And the officers have a lot of better things to do than that. We would hope, to your point, I think your example, if the officers go out and say, hey, you know what, we haven't been out here before, could you just kind of tone it down? We're expecting reasonable adults to tone it down and us not have to send officers again because that's really expensive and there are other things they can do like that are more important. So I think that's what this is really getting at if I had to summarize it.
Mayor, Councilman, correct.
And I just wanted to add, for commercial uses, in particular outdoor dining, those kinds of activities, they have to go through a use permit if they're in a certain radius of a neighborhood, correct?
Mayor, Councilwoman Stark, that is correct in the city of Phoenix. Can't speak to the city of Scottsdale.
Yeah, but I think Scottsdale has this ordinance, so maybe we can call it the Scottsdale Police. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, what I'm trying to say is that if a lot of our commercial uses, they have to go through a process and work with the neighborhood. I live behind a restaurant that has outdoor dining. They had to get a use permit, and they have hours of operation. And on the weekends, they can stay outside till 10, and weekdays 9. And that was an agreement between our neighborhood and the restaurant. So they have ways of working with neighborhoods. The real issue is when you have a loud party in a neighborhood that can really disrupt a neighborhood, and then that continues to be a problem. And so we're trying to address that through this ordinance. And the police do have discretion, correct, when you go out?
Mayor, members of council, Councilwoman Stark, we pride ourselves in that discretion. And absolutely, I think to Councilman Waring's point, we want communities to be celebrating weddings and having festive events in their neighborhoods. We think that's a healthy part of a healthy community. And so we take great pride in those officers going out and using an abundance of discretion on those. But it is those problem locations that impact quality of life, public safety, and so many things that we want to address.
Councilwoman Pastor.
Excuse me, am I hearing when I have a graduation party and a mom really celebrating that her son is graduating with the DJ and Mexican music going on and mariachis and the whole picture? And I'm going to let Susan know. I will advance my whole neighborhood that's what I'll be doing. Possibly closing my private drive that I have right in front so that everybody's there. As long as I stay within the noise ordinance, I'm okay. Is that what I'm hearing? Because it might be a large crowd.
Mayor, members of council, Councilwoman Pastor.
Yes, we will be celebrating.
If you did that footwork on the beginning and let all your neighbors know, and we didn't receive calls for service about the impact to their quality of life on that particular night, yeah, you would be able to do that.
I think they'll be with me, but okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. With that, we will open the public hearing. We'll begin with a guest at Councilwoman Pastor's graduation party, Susan Edwards. And she will be followed.
She will be.
She will be followed by Helen Grimwood.
I'm Susan Edwards, and I live at 1145 West Edgebon Avenue in Phoenix. I am in favor of this ordinance. I wish we could do a whole lot more. I have a couple points to raise, however. The poor police are so overburdened, and the difficulties that, well, when it happened to the house across the street from me, some of it was at night, but the beer pong was Saturday morning in the front yard, and the guy who decided he needed to urinate announced as such and then went in the side yard and did so. It's a lovely thing to witness. But if the parties are on weekends, which is when most of the loud parties are, it seems as if the police are way overburdened. And I know in some areas, I asked in Maryville, and they said it would be 2 hours before they could get out there. I have friends that have called and nobody's been able to come. So I would dearly love to see funds specifically allocated to the police for dealing with this, because it's a growing menace, particularly between party crews and then short-term rentals, which are just taking over the state. I also have a question about in section E3, where it talks about the hearing officer can reduce the costs. I hope that wouldn't happen for repeat offenders, because as far as I'm concerned, these people should pay, because the cost to us, when people have to listen to partiers having sex with prostitutes in the backyard next door to them, and public urination and everything else, is horrible. So that said, I'm for it. But give them money. Thank you.
Thank you. And Helen will have 4 minutes for testimony. She will be followed by Larissa Balderrama.
Madam Mayor, Council, thanks for having this meeting and listening to us once again on the joys and tribulations of being the neighbors of next to short-term rental properties that Sleep 32. I was here last January where I, told you about the property behind me where the noise at times has shaken the windows in my house. And it's hard for me and the rest of my neighbors. We now have 3 short-term rentals in the same block within 500, I've heard 500 feet, maybe it's 700 feet of one another. We don't know who our neighbors are anymore. It impedes our ability to do effective block watch and good neighboring. And it creates a situation where we have to become the police of our own neighborhood in order to even try to get enforcement of the existing ordinances. I have to make sure that whenever I leave my home for the weekend, I hire someone to stay there to keep patrol, essentially, and be there to make sure that my property is protected. My other neighbors either do the same thing or don't, in which case they just don't know about it. We've had not only the problem of the noise and vibration, but we've also had problems with even people coming to use these short-term rentals as event forums for, like, a funeral or a memorial, something where they want to invite a whole lot of people who, even the best of them, flood our neighborhood with people that nobody knows who they are. Recently, one of the people who was going to attend one of these parties, very nice couple, walked into the wrong home because they didn't know, they got the address mixed up, the addresses aren't really well posted. Well, that home has small children and a dad who owns a firearm. They just walked in the middle of the day. These are very, very real problems that we're experiencing, and it's just cranking up. So it's great for the city police department to try to come to the defense of the city. I don't think that they are staffed for it. I have never been able to get the police department to respond on a quick basis to a priority 3 noise complaint. I've even had trouble getting them to respond on a quick basis to burglary. One time I had a burglary, and when I called 911 and they said, well, are they in the house and are they armed? I said, I don't know if they're armed. I can see them in the front doors and the curtains are flapping. So it was about an hour and a half before they got there because there were more important and dangerous things going on that evening in our community. Our police force does a masterful job, but to put them in charge of what should be a zoning matter and what should be a code enforcement officer, and to put me and my neighbors in the position of having to force it through a process that wasn't designed to meet these needs is not fair to anybody. We are entitled to our single-family residential zoning, and we need a serious response. We also need for the city and everybody else who's out at the state legislature now to know that we're doing our best, but it isn't enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Larissa Balderrama, followed by Leonard Clark. And Larissa will have 4 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. I won't need the whole time. We have a brief statement, but my name is Larissa Balderrama. I'm a member of Take Action Phoenix. Take Action Phoenix is a group of neighborhood leaders from a diverse mix of Phoenix neighborhoods dedicated to the issues that impact the integrity and character of our Phoenix neighborhoods. Take Action Phoenix supports this bill as another means just to help minimize the impact of what is referred to as the party houses in our neighborhoods. So we just ask that you support neighborhoods by supporting this ordinance.
Thank you. Leonard will be the final speaker on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Leonard Clark. I was born in the city of Phoenix, so I've watched it grow just like a lot of my friends in the demographic, a little bit older than I am. In fact, my dad would be 100 if he was alive today. I would say that I liked the comments of one of the people when they said that this could be enforced by different groups. I don't think we have to call the police and burden them, as you say, for every little problem. I'm guilty of this myself, not getting to know my neighbors. I think that sometimes we get insulated, we get to know the same people, but as we all know, Phoenix, especially Arizona, we have a large population of coming and going. So I'm just concerned because, yes, I do believe our officers put their lives on the line, but I don't think we need to call them for every little thing. I think that sometimes we need to understand other cultures a little bit better. As the council lady, Ms. Pastora, was asking earlier, I believe in different cultures, there's different ways of celebrating. I personally am not going to be angry about a funeral if people for one time come together for a loved one that has passed away. The other thing that concerns me is I know you're saying that the person being sent out will have, will be able to basically say, we'll lower your fine. I'm still concerned, though, that the black letter law, basically, the code of Phoenix is going to say, hey, you're going to have to pay this, what is it, $1,000 the first time or $1,500, whatever it is, because what if the person going out there does not have cultural awareness? It's a Latino family or whoever it is, a Chinese family celebrating Chinese New Year, whatever, and this person doesn't understand that and just gives them the fine. I'm a little nervous about that. I'd rather just have it in, officially that warning the first time. I'm just concerned about that. I don't think we need to call the police on every little thing. Thank you.
Thank you. We have cards from Pam Fitzgerald, David Nelson, and Ann Ender in favor of the item but not wishing to speak. We will close the public hearing. Will the city clerk please read the title?
Item 92 is for ordinance G6674, an ordinance relating to recovery of costs at events requiring response by police by amending the Phoenix City Code, Chapter 2, Section 2-22 of the Phoenix City Code.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Any council member comments?
Mayor?
Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, people's property rights stop at their property line, and that includes noise. So your property, you're allowed to do pretty much anything you want as long as you don't impose on other people's rights. And when you start looking at some of these party houses and some of the things that are going on in our city, and it's actually across the nation right now, I mean, people seem to think that they have a right to do whatever they want. And I think as a whole, your land is your land. You should be able to do what you want until you start impacting others. And I think it's horrible to have to live next to a property that is constantly and overwhelmingly making that your life unbearable. I dealt with a case like this, oh gosh, many years ago, where we had a group home in a neighborhood. And that neighborhood, and they had people up and down the street. It was in north central Phoenix. And the city had been dealing with it, I think, for almost 13 years prior to that. It was some incredible number. We went out there, brought in the police, did everything, brought in our law department, basically told the lady, I said, hey, look, as far as you're concerned, I said, you're done. You don't ever do this in our area. I find it unacceptable. And the next step is for us to put you in jail. 30 days, she sold the home. Likewise, when people start to understand that the impact of this is that financial impact, they're going to quit disturbing others. It only takes one or two examples. I feel bad for our police department for the one lady that spoke earlier about, you know, this is a priority 2 or priority 3 call. I mean, they are so overstretched right now. We need more police officers on our streets, period. It's not even a debate. We do need more out there. I'm going to be supporting this, Mayor, for those same reasons.
Thank you, Councilman. We are going to quickly clarify the motion and then go to our Vice Mayor, but will the Planning Director?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I just want to clarify that I believe the motion is per the language from the February 27th, 2020 memo, which is the revised language, is what the council desires to approve.
Exactly what I said.
That is exactly what Councilwoman Williams said and exactly what Councilwoman Stark seconded. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment and thank our neighborhood leaders, Pam Fitzgerald, Linda Colino, and Ann Ender for showing up today and filling out cards, and also for helping us bring awareness to this issue. And I'm glad that we're coming up with resolutions and that we're working together on making sure that everyone is happy in their neighborhood and that everyone feels that they can speak up about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional council member comments?
Mayor, just a quick one from me. I'm sorry.
Yes. Councilman DeCiccio.
And then Councilman Guardado made a good point about the neighbors being involved in this, but I think we need to also realize how hard it was for Alan to put this together and to work within the law. I think Alan Stevenson went as far as he possibly could and followed the law. And that's a very difficult thing at times. So I want to give a lot of credit and a lot of the work that was put together. And I know you were being pushed, Alan, and you did as much as you possibly and legally could on this. And as far as I'm concerned, I want to thank you for all the work you did on it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Williams.
I have a quick question. The parties you're referring to are the ones like the calls I get where they're not just till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight. These are weekend parties that beer bottles go over the fence. People have actually had people crawl over their fence where their kids were in there. Are you talking about those, or a simple neighbor has a party that's over, you know, I don't care if they're loud for till 11, 12 o'clock, but then I expect them to be quiet. But, I mean, it's not really interfering with the entire neighborhood, and it's very rare.
Mayor, members of council, Councilman Williams. Yes, to your point, when we look at where we classify where this falls, we're talking about public safety, public health, disturbing the neighborhood. And so but I want to be clear, any citizen can call us about being disturbed by noise in their neighborhood, and we're going to respond. But what then happens through that process is that officer takes in the totality of the witnesses, those calling, and then can author that report that is then filed and goes over to the code enforcement hearing officer, where it's then put into the system. But the criteria is obviously impact on community wellness and public safety, first and foremost.
Okay. I just didn't expect to have a neighbor get a $1,000 fine for a graduation party. I mean, that's totally different than a party house in my mind. So that's what I really wanted to focus on, and not just a neighborhood party. But thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
DeCiccio?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark? Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work on this item. We next move to item 93, which is an 8-hour rule request for an enhanced strategy to address homelessness. And I would begin by asking our city manager if he could explain what is an 8-hour rule request.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In the council rules, there is a rule that talks about the use of staff time for projects that will take significant time that they need, and that significant time is defined as more than 8 hours, that they need a council majority vote for that. In this case, Mayor, you requested us to develop for the City Council a enhanced unified plan to address homelessness, which would be a new project, and particularly if, as I expect, it would involve meeting with community groups. So in my judgment, that would require a council action, which is what you rightfully requested. Under council rules, you're allowed to request that, as would be 3 council members, and it's on the agenda for the council's review.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have been working long and hard on homelessness, but it is a crisis situation, and I believe an additional outreach and enhanced plan makes sense. So I think it's important to confirm that today's vote is not a vote on the plan itself or what the plan will include. It's merely starting the process by which the city staff will enhance our existing plan. So that is the only item we'll be voting on, is to begin the planning process. I would propose that over the next 90 days, staff go out into the community and get feedback through community meetings. Our Public Works Department recently did a robust community outreach process that included a community survey, and I thought that was also very well received and allowed us to reach people who, for whom community meetings might not make sense. So that allows the process to be driven by the community in service to our community members. I also know that our council members, many of whom have a long and important history in this space, want to be deeply involved in the creation of this plan. Several council members have already put forward ideas, both at subcommittee and in other public venues, and I think we need to include those. I believe some council members may want to share their priorities again today in this discussion. Homelessness is not a new issue, but the issues nor are the issues that have brought us to our current situation. But we have the power to address this issue head on like no other council before us, by working directly with our community to determine the areas of greatest importance and investment. I have said time and time again, this is not an issue that can be solved by one city or one neighborhood. That is still true. We will need a partnership with other cities in our community, Maricopa County and the state of Arizona. By greenlighting the process by which an expanded and enhanced homelessness plan is put together, we are sending a clear signal to neighboring communities that we are putting in the hard work, and they should too. I have heard directly from other mayors who are willing to help us with this process and who want to share or to conduct processes in their own communities. I know that many of my fellow council members have items they would like to see included and addressed in the plan. I think some of these items we will hear about today, and others will come up during the planning process. The goal of the process is to have city staff come back after 90 days of working directly with our community and council and present an expanded homelessness plan at a June policy meeting. And we will now hear from council members on the topic. Councilman Waring.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you bringing this to the fore. It is an important issue. It comes up a lot when I'm out in the community in my district. And even, you know, I share boundaries with Deb and Thelda, so we have community groups that cross over, and obviously like Black Mountain, we hear about this kind of stuff a lot. So I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate the fact that you mentioned other mayors, because this isn't solely a Phoenix problem, and so that's a frustration for me. You know, it shouldn't be a concentrated downtown Phoenix issue in terms of solving it. Certainly it should be a shared issue with other mayors, and also the state and the county, which I may have missed it, but I don't think got mentioned, but I hope that's part of it. You asked, I guess, for suggestions, so that's one of mine. I do hear about this issue in my district. A couple specific things. State trust land. We have a lot of state trust land, so we have encampments and stuff. And that has come up before. I believe police have actually bought special equipment to address this issue out in, you know, it's desert area. It's owned by the state. It's in metropolitan Phoenix, 4.5 million people, or metropolitan Phoenix area, 4.5 million people, but it's still the wilderness, basically, in terms of people living out there. It's not safe. So both for their benefit and, you know, not have garbage cleanup and stuff out there, fires. I mean, that's something I'd like to see addressed. An issue that's come up both in my district and then obviously, having been around a while, I know people who aren't in my district, but they contact me because they don't know their own councilman, and they happen to know me or whatever. You know, parks. Our parks seem to be a magnet for this, our preserve areas. And it's taking an amenity and making it not an amenity for the people. I would love to live like right by a park, right? But not if people are traipsing through my yard all the time and so forth. I do hear those kind of things. So that's certainly something, I brought that to both police's attention and you know, the social services agencies as appropriate. But that's something that certainly, you know, get the folks to help, but also, you know, seems to be concentrated areas where this is an issue. We were just discussing one that is in my district, right down the street from my old house, yesterday, about a city project. It's a long story, I won't belabor it, but that's been an issue where you would never maybe expect it to be an issue, but there was an empty lot there for years, and that attracted people, and now they've stayed, and so it's right in the middle of a neighborhood, and we have a well site there, and yada, yada. It's just the fact that that is impacting development in the city of a nice city project. You know, just yesterday I was hearing that is also an issue, so that's something that I'd like to see us address as well. But I really appreciate you talking about this. It is a really hard problem. We've tried to do stuff in the past. It obviously hasn't been enough with the expansion. You know, we've tried to address the roadways. That's another thing. I know there are Supreme Court cases that limit what we can do, but that median thing, I can't tell you how many times, for example, and I believe this would be a state property where it is, but like coming off the off-ramp when I come to work from the 10 up 7th Avenue, and you come around that corner to get off at 7th Avenue, it seems to have abated a little bit, but there was always somebody like sort of hanging out with a sign. Now it's more like half the days. Somebody's gonna get killed out there, and that's a terrible thing. And so anything we can do to address this issue, it's gonna save lives. I think it's gonna improve the quality of life of our citizens, and I do appreciate it's well worth the 8 hours, for sure. I'm sure it's gonna take longer than that to address these issues. And so I'll stop there, but you were asking for, I think, specifics, and I wanted to say thank you, but also those are a few things that I'd like to see our staff look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are great suggestions, and I think will help us have a better plan. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for putting this on the agenda. As you know, a couple weeks ago, we did a tour of District 3, and we spent some quality time in Sunny Slope, and there is certainly an issue in Sunny Slope. But it's not just there. There's a lot of people experiencing homelessness that are hidden. They live in the washes. We see a lot of that up in District 1, 2, and 3. I suspect you probably see it in the Levine area as well. But we've got to try to address that. It seems to me these people living in these areas maybe don't want help, and it may be more of a mental illness issue. And so I think we can look at ways the city can go to the state and say, we need help. This is really a statewide problem, especially when it comes to mental health. So hopefully we'll be able to look at that. I also hope that we can talk more about how the entire region comes together and how we can work with Maricopa County. I had a chance to talk to the county manager about street feeding, and they're limited. They don't have a lot of authority because the state took away some of the authority they had. And street feeding can really turn into a vector control problem. And that is a public safety problem. So I think if we can try to team up with the county as well to talk about how we can help them and how they can help us, I would like to see that. I'm happy to make a motion at any time, but I know there's other people that want to speak.
I think if you want to make a motion, that's great.
Well, I move to approve then.
Thank you. Councilmember Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think, thank you for prioritizing this. I think we've long said that it's not only about the folks that are choosing to live in public or having to live in public, but it's also the community around, particularly the CAS that we need to work on. I represent south of the CAS campus, and as we deal with the crisis, I do think we need to figure out how we support the communities around there. With the plan, as we move forward with it, some of the things that we want to see is that we invest in the community around it, whether it's gating or abandoning alleys in the neighborhood surrounding there, some street lighting, sidewalk improvements, adding hawks, adding dumpsters, figuring out if there is possibilities for public restrooms, or the ability for those folks to access that. I think another place where we can, Alan was here, where we can be helpful would be to expedite the workforce and low-income housing through our planning development department. I think the way we want to see this issue tackled is with a housing first approach. We a lot of times look at this as an enforcement problem or have been trying to fight this or figure this out with enforcement. We've seen some national best practices that tell us that this is not working. And so instead of that, this housing first approach basically means that homelessness first solution is to provide housing to the people without home without kind of having having to do certain rules, certain things before finding the housing. So providing housing is the foundation for all the rest of the services and work we're gonna do. And so I'm excited and available to work on this. So just let us know how we can support also as the council officers. I think this is something that we should work together amongst ourselves. And then my final comment is just applauding the recognition that as Phoenix, it might not be fair that the other cities aren't helping out, but we are the biggest city and we have to do something to support not only the population that is homelessness, but also suffering homelessness, but also the communities that are around the services.
Thank you. Councilwoman Williams. Okay, do you want to go first?
I too, I think it's a pastime. This is a critical issue throughout the city. And I believe very strongly that it shouldn't just be Phoenix. I think the governor should do as you ask and get the mayors together and the mayors take more responsibility. What I'd really like to see is one or two larger facilities that are regional, that we would be part of, but not solely responsible for. And having worked with state trust land, the county, I mean, there are county islands that I think would be appropriate for such a facility, as well as some of the state trust land, I think. And I don't think they all have to be located near anything that we currently have. What I've learned working with Tamara for the last couple of years on homeless, getting homeless, it's not that simple as just putting them in a house. They take case management, they have to be stabilized, they have to have an income, they have to have ID, and they have to be signed up for health care. So I would hope that the new facilities have that ability to get people through that, and if at all possible, would also provide a lot of mental health services, because I think that's extremely important in many cases, and that's infecting. But it is a challenge, but I think the first huge challenge we have to get through is the fact that we need regional support. We need the other cities to recognize it's not just our responsibility. And I was talking with the Peoria mayor, and she says, okay, we have 7 homeless people on our list. I said, well, you are lucky, lady. And she said, but we have this court we put them through. So I asked our judge to come over because she sent me a copy of what they do. And he looked at it and he laughed. He said, she stole it from Phoenix. That's exactly what our mental health and our drug court do. So we're doing more than just providing shelter. And I think the others need to really realize that, because I didn't remember it, so she didn't know it. And they're following our example, just not enough. So you can't just send people here. But I really think it's important that we work together. We have them recognize how important it is, because, as Jim said, our ravines are full. The bushes along Bell Road are full. We find needles everywhere. And I would like to see this too, have the ability to care for a dog. Because we have so many homeless people that will not come because they will not give up their pet. And I think there's a way to manage that, to get the health care for the animals as well. So as you go forward, I'd love to further discuss this with you. But thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership, not just in our city, but for talking to other cities about what they are doing. Vice Mayor.
Yes, I just wanted to reiterate that I agree with everything that my colleagues are saying, and I just wanted to add and re-emphasize that I want to make sure that there is maximum community involvement in creating our strategy to address homelessness. There are so many amazing organizations providing outreach services, affordable housing options, and job training. Groups like Phoenix Rescue Mission and Native American Connections. I want to make sure community organizations have a seat at the table as well and are brought in on the front end. I want to ensure that our strategy is also committed to protecting our neighborhoods. Since being on council, I have heard time and time again the desire from neighborhood leaders and their organizations to be more involved in the decision made at the city level. Neighbors know their neighborhoods best, and I believe that we need to listen to them and bring them into this process. I also believe we need to be innovative in our thinking. Homelessness is not only happening in Phoenix, and there are many cities and towns across the country working on ways to address the issue. I am committed to looking at best practices, but I also want to ensure that we think outside the box and are reactive to what is working and what is not. Finally, I want to make sure that our plan is comprehensive and it includes emphasis on upstream strategies. As someone who spent the last 15 years of her life fighting for good jobs that ensure working families have access to living wages and affordable health care, I believe it is vitally important to address the issue of good jobs. We cannot ignore the fact that one of the best ways to keep people from experiencing homelessness is by ensuring they can pay their bills while working one job. In 2020, we should not expect nothing less. Thank you so much, Mayor, and looking forward to working with all of my colleagues on this issue.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And Councilwoman Pastor has been working a lot on this issue, including some things that may come to fruition even before this plan. Councilwoman.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing this to the forefront. As many of us have been talking about it, working on it, it is now coming to the forefront. And appreciate the work. What happened to me this morning was as I was dropping off kids, or I had dropped off kids, I listened to my affirmations. And I pulled up to my house, and I see a gentleman sitting in the next door neighbor's driveway. And I'm kind of like just taken back, and he's sitting there. Well, he had pulled several grapefruits from my tree and was sitting there on the driveway peeling and eating. And that's when I realized, okay, this gentleman is homeless and he's hungry. So as I pass by, he looks at me and I look at him, I smile. He looked at me very scared because he sees I'm driving into my driveway. So I jump out of my car, I get into the house, I pull a banana, I pull everything I can get that I can put in a bag, get in water, run outside, and poof, he's gone. And I was like, oh, I must have scared him. And here I go, get in the car, looking around. I'm now running late. I'm now running late to my meeting, looking around the neighborhood for him everywhere. I even drove down the park. He's not there. So I was like, okay, I'll put the food in my car, and if I see him, I will stop. So there's so many people experiencing homelessness, but what we really have to remember is the human element of it. And this is such a complex dynamic that only all of us can work together and solve. What I have some questions regarding the 8-hour rule is that we already have Phoenix Cares. And Phoenix Cares was the beginning, or not a beginning, or a continuation of trying to solve some of the dynamics happening in the homeless population. So my question, and you don't have to answer, Ed, until I get through. My question is, don't we already have a roadmap for Phoenix Cares? And what is being asked, can we just expand that roadmap? And if we do, then what do we need to do to expand it and include all the different elements that need to be included? And then I want to know how many staff departments are working on all of this, because we are working on this. And right now, I'll just let you answer, but what I also know is we need a comprehensive approach, not only county and state, but we need federal, because on the federal side that I'm working on is on the Grand Canal. And so there's a lot of dynamics that are starting to pop up on the Grand Canal. And I would like the intergovernmental relations to start engaging now with what we need to do on a federal level, what we need to do on a state level and a county level, and how do we start planning for the summer, because in June and July, legislators come together and they start to figure out what they want to work on, how they're going to craft their bill, and start advocating with many others on funding in the area of mental health, housing, workforce, and across abroad, all the different services that we provide. In this whole process, I want, and I would like to see, a survey designed not only for businesses that are experiencing some of the situations in the area, but what I would like to have designed is a survey for those that are homeless, and ask what their needs are. Because we're crafting something that we think they need, we don't know what they need. And they may not want housing, they may want something else. And so I think that's critical in the sense that they are, and the population that we're trying to fix, which may not have a problem, in our eyes they do, but they may not. They may choose to want to live on the streets. And so I think that's a dialogue that we need to have before and incorporated in our plan. In this plan, I would like to see some accountability and matrix, especially if we are going to ask for additional funding. I want to know, like to know where the funding is going to go to and what are the matrix in that piece. And I just really appreciate the expertise and passion that on this dais that you have that can help craft a global plan and use many best practices that are probably, you just need to put us in, not in charge, but activate us to do it. As for the dogs, I have been working closely. I had asked Phoenix Cares What are one of the situations? Why are they not going in to get services? I was told, well, they have dogs and there's no daycare, I call it a daycare, a doggy daycare for their dogs. They're not willing to detach from them unless they're, they're in a safe space and safe place. I worked out with Humpaki Farms in Scottsdale, who has a barn out there. They're converting a barn into a doggy daycare. We are working with Midwestern for the veterinarian services to come out and do veterinary services for the dogs. We have worked with PetSmart to PetSmart charities to then provide food for the pets. And then I'm having a doggy tea party where those attending can bring their dog and dress them up and put a hat for a tea party. And so to raise money for this. What also got worked out was that with CBI, CBI went to go see the concept. CBI said this works. What we know is that if they take services and they're in a type of program, the program will be willing to transport them to visit their dogs because it's part of the rehabilitation piece, if they have access or have the insurance that is needed. So I guess what I'm saying is I saw a problem as a collective in my office. We figured out a solution, and I think you have experts that can make things happen. It's just a matter of what their expertise is and what they want to work on. So I think we can solve the problem and be a model. And as we have other tentacles out pushing the state, the federal government, and the county. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And definitely want to emphasize that the great work you're doing, whether it be with the Grand Canal or the partnership with pets, much of that will come to fruition before 90 days is up, and we certainly want to full speed ahead with what we are already doing. Councilman Nowakowski.
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this up. We are in a crisis, and some neighborhoods surrounding the Human Service Campus is ground zero when we talk about this homelessness. You have Grant Park Neighborhood Association, Central Park Neighborhood Association, Oakland Neighborhood Association, Woodland Homeowners Association, St. Matthews Homeowners Association, and University Park, IGA, Sherman Park, and Cofelt and Nuestro Barrio that are affected on a daily basis. We've been working along with these neighborhoods and setting up meetings to have that conversation. Because I believe when you bring people together from different walks of life, different concerns, that we can find that common thread. And for the last years, these communities have been telling the Human Services, these are our needs. Here's what we want. And basically, it's not happening. My biggest concern is that they've been going through this for years and years and years. They're afraid to even go throw out their garbage at night because they don't know what they're going to find in the alley or in the big black garbage bins. Their children aren't allowed to play outside because they're afraid that somebody might come by and snatch their kid, which happened at Capitol School. There's children that's being offered drugs, alcohol. You have kids that won't use the park because they're afraid, because a young lady of 3 years old was trying to be molested by a child molester that lives around Cass. These individuals shouldn't live like that, folks. We get calls on a daily basis saying there's a person without clothes running through our neighborhood and our children are looking at this. There's a man that has a syringe and is using drugs right in front of our kids, and how do we explain this to them? To our kids, Councilman? There's a crisis. And these neighborhoods are the ones that are in ground zero. And the solution for many people from the outside is add more beds. So we're having that conversation. And we're trying to figure out how we can come up with a solution. What I don't like about the mayor's plan is that you're putting stipulations and a planning and zoning thing that the neighborhood should be putting in those stipulations. We don't understand what they're going through. So I would really like to see that portion of the permitting process pulled out and the stipulations pulled out, and we allow it to go through the process that it's going through, where the neighborhoods, where these neighborhood associations are being affected every day, have a chance to tell them this is the stipulations that we like to see. I asked, did you all have a conversation with the mayor to put in these stipulations that I'm reading? And they said, no. She hasn't come to one of our neighborhood associations. How about a representative from the mayor's office? No, they haven't been here. So how can we, individuals that haven't asked the people that are ground zero, that are being affected every day, and we start creating stipulations and a planning process that it should be going through the community first, then it goes through the village, then it goes through our planning and zoning, then it comes to us. And after that process is done, then we, as council members, could actually put in stipulations that we feel that we heard out there that's missing. So that's what's missing in this whole process. So I would really like to remove this zoning stipulation from this process. It's 8 hours, and let it just continue its natural path. I think it's going to the villages next. So I think that's one of the things I would make a recommendation. And if the maker of the motion would agree to that, I would second it.
I guess I'm confused because I thought that we're just asking staff to work on strategies. I think the mayor had made some comments on a zoning case, but I don't think this was a part of this.
I would commit that this enhanced plan would not include the zoning process, and that it would go to the full process as Councilman Nowakowski has recommended, with community meetings, the village, the planning commission, and so the zoning process we would completely separate, although certainly we would expect if people would like to provide comments during our community meetings.
Yeah,
But,
well, that's
but
what
the
I thought.
process I would commit would be the
This is a
completely
bigger
separate.
picture, be
Yes.
more comprehensive, what other departments should be doing. That's the way I took your memo. So that was my motion. So I see what you're saying, Councilman Nowakowski, but I don't think it's really a part of this process unless someone, as the mayor mentions, brings it up in one of the neighborhood meetings.
Well,
or
she
district
mentioned it up in the press conference.
Yeah.
And that's where it all came about, so. And then afterwards, it was added on as an add-on for this meeting, so that's where I'm asking those questions, because there was no dialogue between ourselves, right? So I just want to make sure and have clarity on this.
Yeah.
The other thing is I agree 100% on multiple locations. I believe there should be some center on the west side of Maricopa County. I believe there should be something on the east side and something on the north side where we're not just the only center. I think Cass is a great idea. It's a great concept. But it's for 400 beds, folks. And that's what this neighborhood agreed to. And I believe if we have 400 beds here, 400 beds on the west side, on the east side, and the north side, I think we can handle that. And I think this program, what they've created at Cass, people need to take it and cookie cut it to other places. Because it works. It works. But not with all these thousands and thousands of people trying to use the services. Just because we're good stewards and we're helping out with these nonprofits and we came up with a good method doesn't mean that we became the mecca for all the homeless issues. The other big thing that we encounter a lot of is the mentally illness, right? That there's not a state hospital where our police officers or the deputies can actually take individuals that are having problems, and that we can actually help them through their rehab or making sure they're on the right on the right drugs that they need. So we need to figure out a way that we can create that, because I know when I was younger, there was that service out there that really relieved the police officers and the deputies in having a location to actually give service to these individuals instead of putting them in jail for 24 hours or so and then releasing them. And then the biggest thing that I hear from the community is beautification projects, that over the years, people have to put fences. And sometimes individuals put fences that are 6 feet, 10 feet high in front of their houses, and they're out of code. And the reason they're doing that is to protect themselves. So we need to really figure out a way to come up with a program to really help out these neighborhoods and reimburse them or help them out in beautifying their neighborhoods, bringing it back to how it was before this crisis happened. So those are some of the issues that I'm hearing out there that we really need to address. And I really want to thank everyone that has brought it to this point. And we really need to make sure that all these neighborhoods that right now, what I call ground zero, needs to be involved somehow in some way. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will go
Mayor?
to Councilman Waring next, but I wanted to see if there was a chance for our planning director to come up and to talk a little bit about the Human Service Campus application and how people might provide input into what should be the stipulations.
Thank you, Mayor, because I haven't had a briefing on this.
Mayor, members of council, in this particular case, due to the location of the Human Services Campus, it requires a special permit, which is a legislative act by the mayor and council, just like a rezoning case that you hear all the time. In this particular case, staff and the applicant have been working on the stipulations and asking for additional information to come up and evaluate this particular request for a number of months now. And so the draft stipulations that we did go around and have some quick discussion with several of your offices and those of you that were around yesterday are stipulations that staff is working towards as we evaluate the request and come forward eventually with a recommendation that will show up just like we do with all the other zoning cases and a listed recommendation of stipulations. So for any zoning case, you always have the stipulations that are attached, and that's because ultimately at the end of the day, it's a mayor and council decision. Staff doesn't get to decide if the zoning is changed or not. It's a list of here's the stipulations, and then it's up to the council to decide if they're going to support that. So right now, we are very early in the process. It's only the development of the stipulations from staff and an applicant that have been working on these particular stipulations so that as this goes forward and as Councilman Nowakowski, alluded to, the current plan is to have them go to the April Central City Village Planning Committee for information. Staff has asked them to go there to get additional public input. The councilman had requested, and they had a couple of neighborhood meetings over the last year to get additional input as part of this process as well. And so after that meeting in April, they would come back and at that point make any adjustments to their application. Staff would work on the final evaluation of it and any staff stipulations. Then it goes through the full public rezoning hearing process, which would start at the Central City Village Planning Committee for them to make a recommendation, then the Planning Commission, then ultimately the City Council. So we're a long ways away from what any of these stipulations would be, and it is like a more traditional zoning case, not anything like this bigger picture look at how do we address homelessness from a larger scale issue across the city.
Thank you. I thought it was important for you to clarify that. In no way are we voting on the zoning case today, but because that is of intense community interest, I thought it was important that you share that process. So there is a legislative process that we will be going through. We are not voting on any changes to the Human Service Campus in this vote.
Mayor, that is correct.
Wonderful.
Ask a question.
I guess I had said, is it, okay, Councilwoman Pastor.
How long have you been working on these stipulations?
It's been, Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, it's been a number of months, so we've gone back and forth with Human Services Campus. They initially filed the application back in January of last year. It was filed with incomplete information, didn't have everything that was necessary to process, and staff's been working with them to bring that up to speed. We've had additional meetings and discussions with them, and also with our departments who are ultimately charged with responding to all of these issues. Many of you received information about how much money the city is spending to address homeless issues. those are big impacts that other departments are bearing, not the Planning and Development Department. So we've been having meetings with police, with human services, with neighborhood services, public works, and streets as well as we develop the stipulations, because all of those things impact those departments as well, so that as this case comes forward through the public hearing process, staff has vetted it through all the different departments and worked on coming up with a good set of stipulations that the council can vote up or down or change whatever they wish to do as this goes through the process based upon public input.
So may I make a suggestion? You obviously been working on this for quite some time, working with a bunch of departments. Yesterday, I just happened to have a meeting with you. And in the process, I wasn't part of the press conference. I hadn't seen the press conference, nothing. So yesterday, I said, I hear this buzzing around. What are these stipulations that people are talking about? And then stipulations were dropped, or I received stipulations. I didn't get a briefing. Nothing happened, just stipulations dropped. My suggestion is that you keep all of us in the loop so that we know what we're talking about and we're aware of what's happening. I didn't realize all of this was happening. I just knew there was conversation, but I didn't realize you were working on stipulations. So would appreciate that in the future.
Mayor, Councilman Pastor, I will make sure to do that.
Councilman Waring.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to respond to a few things people said. First, to Carlos's point about punishment. So it may have sounded like, I was only emphasizing that. That's not really, my focus. I'm supportive of the different tact we've been taking. But I would also want to point out, I think it was Thelda who mostly emphasized this, the public safety component. I mentioned state trust land. Police have sent me pictures of like how people are living out there, which isn't safe, obviously 110 or something, and you're out in a tent or at best, or out in the elements. And then also what it does to the environment, the garbage and so forth. I can give you examples. I was out and about having meetings one day, and a fella, so Greenway cuts across my district, but the area this fellow lives in was actually in the area represented in the state Senate, which is in Deb's district, on Greenway. He's like, this is like the third time I've had to call. I don't know what to do. He sent me an email. I happened to be reading the email between meetings. I mean, the amount of garbage and the fella sleeping right on Greenway. And there's not a lot of, Deb, I know you're familiar, there's not a lot of right-of-way there. It's very narrow. Anybody on the sidewalk who gets startled could fall off in the street. 19th Avenue, that used to be the border of my district with Thelda's district. Because of redistricting, it's now 15th Avenue, but obviously I know people over there. There's a park there. Again, when you drive out there, which I did when somebody asked me to, I mean, it's kind of shocking what you see. It impacts the neighbor's quality of life, but you also think somebody's living in a bush. And to my mind, you can't help the people until you locate them, right? So I talked about like the intersections and stuff. This is pretty obvious locations, not the state trust land, but like the two I just mentioned, which are major streets that officers and city staff must be driving by all the time. You can't miss it. There are only 9 of us, but there are 14,000 city employees. At some point, we need to be, calling that in, recognizing the public health issues. The 19th Avenue Park, that again used to be on Thelda's side, but right on our border. I mean, parents are like, I can't send my kids up there. There's needles and stuff in the sand. Same with Cactus Park. I live on Cactus, but again, this is as you cut across towards I-17. I mean, nobody wants kids to find needles. I think Thelda had specifically mentioned that, or somebody had. These are public health issues, not just for the people engaging in this activity. So we need to try to address it. And when I can drive through the intersection, again, not my district, but I drive through it all the time, and it's right on the border of my district, Shea and Tatum, there are people on all 4 corners every single day. And they used to be out in the medians till we passed that ordinance a few years ago. But really, no matter what direction I'm going, but particularly if I'm going north, coming through Paradise Valley is right there. So this cuts across all demographics. So if I'm coming north through Paradise Valley, you'll see people literally on the corner. Some well-intentioned but wrong-headed citizen is waving a couple bucks in the middle lane when there's a red light. I would say 50% of the time I go through that intersection, somebody is going out across a couple, because there's a turn lane, there's a lane, and then there's the middle lane, and then there's like 6 lanes of traffic, and people are out in like the middle lane, and all of a sudden the light's changing, and somebody's trying to hustle back. Dollars to donuts. I don't know if you can still say that because donuts are now more expensive than $1, depending on where you go, but that used to be a phrase back in the day. I mean, you can send somebody out there anytime from neighborhood services, and there's going to be 4 people on the corners panhandling, saying they're homeless. I mean, those are people easy to contact. We talk about having a hard time locating. This is something I would also like to see. How proactive are we being? You can't, I think it was Laura who said you can't make people take help. That's true. But, you know, you can certainly kind of say, hey, and at least force the issue a little bit. You got a sign that says you're homeless, you're out in the middle of traffic. At some point, that's got to be a violation of something. Is there some way we can use that to contact and say, you know, we got these services, would you be interested? To the question of services and like pets and so forth. So all of you now, we just had a briefing, most of you knew, but we had 2 new members, but now Starfish Place, right, for sex trafficking victims and human trafficking victims. So, you know, that's for families, because we had plenty of facilities for single people, mostly young women, you know, single young females, but not so many people with families and kids. Now we do. If we can make that happen, is there some facility, is there something we can do? That's in a residential area. Again, that's in Deb's district, but that's surrounded by a neighborhood. Nobody seems to be complaining about that. If you go by, you wouldn't even know it's there. I can't say where it is because of security reasons, but if you drove by it, you wouldn't necessarily know it's there. It looks like a nice apartment complex. Is there something we can do in that vein to take some of the pressure off of Cass that also is not going to impact other neighborhoods, because we don't want to do that as well? I can tell you, you know, I represented the area for quite some time. I've also represented some of Deb's district when I was in the state Senate. So I can tell you, I've knocked on a lot of doors up there. The last year, I've met about 6,000 people at front doors. But I've been doing that for a long time. I can tell you the homeless issue, I don't think ever got mentioned until about 2012. And now, it used to be easily streets was number 1, water leaks was number 2, and this council took proactive action on both of those, and we've addressed those. And I can tell you the number of comments about that have dropped dramatically. I think number 1 now might very well be homelessness. I can't really think of what the other contender would even be that's not like a federal issue where people are talking politics or presidential race or something. So that shows the breadth of the problem. It's gone from basically 0. Now, that's one part of town, and that's, you know, that's one council person, and that's not a random sample necessarily, but it's definitely, it sounds like maybe some of your experiences, one person raised their hand, might be similar. So I applaud the mayor for bringing this up, but it is something that I think we have to address, and I'm just trying to throw some things out there of places that look like problem spots to me, places where you can locate people who definitely potentially are homeless. I mean, I would certainly hope our city staffers, if they see somebody sleeping on Greenway, like right on Greenway with garbage all over, I mean, I think Ginger Spencer had to go out and clean that up a couple times because they went out there, they moved the guy, he went back, they moved him again. Both times he left this huge mess. So bad for him, bad for us, and a lot of city staff work and so forth. So much better if there's some way to address it. If a dog is an issue or something, maybe there's something that could be done. I would say it was much harder should have been much harder anyway, to find places for women who are victims of sex trafficking who have kids. I mean, you know, a dog seems like it wouldn't be quite as heavy a lift as like multiple kids. So, again, easier said than done, but those are things I'd like to see the staff address. And if you're getting repeated calls about trouble spots, because that is what I hear from neighbors, they get frustrated because they're like, I've called about this 5 times and, you know, it's still a problem. I would certainly hope that that gets scrutiny. I know our police department keeps real-time records, and try to address that for everybody's sake. So thank you for indulging me, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Councilman Nowakowski.
So I have a question for Alan. Is Alan still here? So Alan, when did you actually start working on the stipulation for the permit request for the Human Service Campus that was mentioned yesterday in the mayor's press conference?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, I don't know the exact date of when staff started having meetings with them. Part of the normal rezoning process where staff develops stipulations is, once an application is deemed complete, usually about a month, 5 weeks later, we have a meeting with the applicant to go over and talk about stipulations. Staff has been reviewing those applications and coming up with draft stipulations. So it would have been sometime in the spring of last year's early summer, depending on when everything was submitted, that they would have started having those. I was in a couple of the early meetings, but then there's been a number of meetings that staff has had with the Human Services Campus and that development team, along with the departments who are involved in this to develop those stipulations. Just like we would in a normal case, this one's just much more involved because of the community concerns and issues surrounding this, and also the impact on other staff departments. We routinely meet with, for example, the Street Transportation Department on a zoning case and impacts, to the street network as a new case comes in. So this is in that same vein. It just is much more involved because of the complexities of this case.
So can you tell me what a low-bearing shelter is? It's the first time I heard about it yesterday when I was reading the stipulations and who can actually use these shelters.
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, the low barrier shelter concept, as I understand it, is in use in some other cities, and in this particular case, the Andre House is proposing to be included as part of this Human Services Campus expansion, where they are working to fundraise to open this low barrier shelter, where in fact they will allow people with dogs and that have other typical issues that they don't want to go into cast. They may have their belongings that they don't wish to check and part with, and so the low barrier shelter is meant to address that population of folks and try and get them into some services in a manner that they're a little more comfortable with, that because they don't want to go into cast for various reasons.
Now, some of the individuals from the community were asking me what that was. Like, I have no idea. And then they're asking for 100 beds, right?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, staff,
right?
yeah, the draft stipulations are requiring them a minimum of 100 beds, and that's because one of the things that staff has heard repeatedly is about there are beds available. People could get into CAS at times, but they don't want services, and because of some of those barriers, whether they're pets, as Councilwoman Pastor just mentioned, or other things. And so the Human Services Campus, as part of their outreach, has been talking about, we're going to develop this low barrier shelter. To do this, we want to ensure via the stipulations that they are meeting some minimum standards of what they're telling the public relative to making sure that they're not saying we're going to do this, but then there's no stipulation that guarantees a minimum beds to address what the public expectation is.
Now, Alan, is this above the additional 500 that was mentioned in yesterday's press conference?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, I don't know I was there, but I don't know the context of immediately what the mayor mentioned right before that. In general, the way the stipulations work, the applicant has requested to increase from 425 up to 1,000 beds. That 100 would be subtracted from that 1,000, so there would be 900 beds available within the rest of the Human Services Campus if council approves what the applicant requests at 1,000. That's a big if, and we're a long ways away from that.
And I apologize to my colleagues for asking these questions, but these are concerns in the community that there might be not just 1,000 bids, but there might be 1,100 bids, right? So thank you.
Thank you, and I think it is important to clarify today's vote is not on the Human Service Campus application. Councilwoman Stark.
And thank you, Mayor. We could probably talk about this subject all night long, but I just, one last thing. Because we're talking about public health, I do think it's important that somehow we reach out to the county and have a discussion on that issue. If you recall, in San Diego a few years ago, there was an outbreak of hepatitis in the population of people experiencing homelessness. I really think we need to engage on them. We did work with them on healthy giving, and that worked out really well. So I think we need to partner on this, since hopefully, somehow we can reach out to the county and make sure they're a part of our discussion, because there's so much overlapping going on. Animals, they have animal control, so I think we've got to really reach out to them.
That is a wonderful, very important suggestion. We will now go to the request to speak
Mayor?
cards.
Oh.
Pelly.
Mayor? Oh,
Okay, we will go to Councilman DeCiccio and then Penny Alley Taylor, followed by Marsha Clark Campbell.
sure, Mayor, and thank you. Just a couple quick things, because since this is going to be all directed towards staff, we've got to be able to get our input and what we'd like to see at least. I mean, there's no doubt that this is probably, as Jim had mentioned, this is the #1 crisis in the city of Phoenix right now. Other than the lack of police, I can't imagine any issue right now that the public is not aware of. But it's also about those individuals that are on the streets. I mean, we have to have a level of compassion, but we also have to realize what's happening in our neighborhoods and across our city. You know, these individuals that are homeless, you know, the simplest things of going to the bathroom, where are they going to go? So what's happening right now is you're seeing them, they're going to the bathroom in alleyways and people's properties, and it's creating a health hazard, not just for them, but for the neighborhoods and the individuals that have to deal with this themselves. So I've heard this for so many years now, where I've heard individuals say, well, we're going to get the state to do this. At the end of the day, we can only be responsible for ourselves. And that means that we're either going to tackle this issue. I've heard this so many times I can't believe it. We've always come up with a plan, and it's always fallen short because it's never enough. It's never made it work. And it was always staff coming back saying, this should do it. And it was always meant because, and I'm glad we did something on it, but at the end of the day, nothing really occurred because it just continued to grow and it became worse. So if we're going to make a commitment, the commitment has to be to really solve it. $3 million is a drop in the bucket that's going to take to solve this problem. It's not going to be done by that amount of money. It needs to be significant, it has to be real, and it should be something that's going to solve it with some metrics in there that says we have solved it, or we're going to solve this within a period of time. I know you can't do it 100%. I get it, especially when it comes to these social matters. But at the very least, we should have a plan in place that is going to do that. Like I said, I've heard this so many times, and it's not you, Mayor, at all. This is well before you. But everyone comes in and says they're going to do something, then there's always a small number and small plan in place, and it's just meant to make people feel good. When, in fact, this is a real issue. This is something that's impacting all of us, and it's impacting our neighbors, and it's having a deleterious effect on those individuals that are having to be homeless. The issue dealing with the downtown area, what it's doing to Councilman Nowakowski's district, it is patently unfair. If I had this in my district right now, and it was just me having to bear the burden, or my neighbors having to bear the burden, it's just not right. It is literally an unfair situation. So looking for another location, say, hey, we're going to work with other cities, other communities, I think that is fantastic. But at the end of the day, that is not going to be successful because everybody's been trying to work with other communities. It's good to continue on that path, but we ought to be finding locations in the city of Phoenix where we would be able to do this ourselves as well. Again, it goes back to my point. We can only solve those problems that we know we can handle ourselves. Expecting others to help us do something is, I teach my kids this. You've got to be independent. You've got to be able to solve your problems yourself. Don't look to others to solve your problems. It is their responsibility. I get it. But it is also ours to take care of our own neighbors. The other part deals with closing down of access ways. And I think that this is something that Councilwoman Vice Mayor Guardado had pointed out, too, what she's doing in her district by closing off alleyways. I think this is a phenomenal move to do that because if you look at it, it's creating a safety net around those neighborhoods that have these alleyways that others have been using. So I think that's one of the things that need to be in there. The other part, dealing with best practices. We always say the words best practice. Well, they don't always work. And they haven't been working across the country on everything, especially when it comes to those that are mentally ill. The mentally ill are the real problem that we should be focused on right now. I think the organizations are doing an amazing and God's work out there for those individuals that are not mentally ill. But addressing that is a significant amount of money, significant amount of time, and it is those individuals that are the ones that we really ought to be focused on because they're the hardest to solve, and they're the ones that we really ought to be looking at. So
given all that, and then I guess finally, if you want to take a look at a model not to do, we should not be doing anything San Francisco is doing, because every time they try to solve it, they throw money at it, they do what they have to do. It does not solve it, it just makes it worse. So we need to be looking outside the box, and we need to be looking at ideas that are creative, that are going to challenge us. And I know Sam Stone in my office has been working on some models, and he's been calling around the entire country. I would strongly suggest staff work with him, at least get some of his ideas, because they're quite frankly amazing. And they deal with those specific issues that are going to end up, I believe, end up solving the problem. But again, I don't want staff to think that $3 million is going to make it work. That is insane. It is not even close to being enough for what we're going to need to do in the city of Phoenix if we're serious about it, other than just talk. Thank you, Mayor.
And Councilman, is there a number that you have in mind?
Well, the number will be determined by the plan.
Okay.
So and I appreciate throwing a number out there, but you can't throw just a number to say, hey, this is what it ought to be. It may be $15 million if you want to solve it. But it has to be a real thing based on real numbers, and it has to be individuals not afraid to. We should be seeing, as Councilwoman Pastor brought up, we need to be seeing metrics, or not just metrics, but a matrix saying, hey, if you want to do these things, this is what the cost is going to be for each thing, and then allow us as a council to pick those things. So if the goal is to solve the problem, the biggest problem that we have right now, then it's going to take a full commitment, and it's going to be big. Yeah. So it's not a number anyone can throw out right now other than a starting point, which I appreciate you doing, because that's a starting point. But at the end of the day, I think what Councilman Pastor brought up, you got to bring up metrics. If we want to do these 5 things, 7 things, 15 things, this is what it's going to be. And the way to do that is to, like you're planning on doing, engaging the community, engaging those individuals that are involved in this, having them come up with numbers, and say, here's the things we really need to have done. But I think we ought to really be focused on the mentally ill, because they're the biggest challenge, and I feel the worst for them. I feel heartbroken for them, because they can't control themselves. It is not something that they're doing on purpose. It is doing because they lack medication. They don't have the ability to make some of these decisions themselves, Mayor. So those are the individuals I have a huge care for, only because they're helpless in our community. Thank you, Mayor. Sorry.
Thank you. No, and I appreciate your passion on behavioral health. And I don't know if you are watching and could see, but staff indicated they would welcome your office and Sam Stone's suggestion and any lists you have of sites that you think would be appropriate for smaller facilities. I apologize to Penny Alley Taylor, who I called up and then has just been standing there, but thank you for your patience.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. On behalf of Valley of the Sun United Way, we wanted to share our support for the Mayor and the Council's actions to take up this issue to find and seek safer shelter and affordable homes in our community. Maricopa County is one of the fastest growing communities in the nation, and while that brings many opportunities, it also brings challenges, including the need for affordable housing options for families and individuals. Ending homelessness in the Valley has long been a priority for United Way, and many of our donors and partners list homelessness and affordable housing among the most pressing issues facing our community today. United Way supports the city's leadership to create a shared, collaborative, regional solution for looking forward to supporting and partnering in these efforts on behalf of the communities, our donors, and all of the partners that we serve. So we are in support of moving forward with this, and we will be there.
Thank you, and United Way has been there for the major advancements we have made in ending and fighting homelessness, so thank you for your partnership. We will have Marcia Clark Campbell, followed by Jessica Bueno. Marcia Clark Campbell? Are you
Michael
Marcia Clark?
Pierce.
What? Okay, is Marcia Clark Campbell here? Marcia Clark Campbell will be next to. But we will, how about we do Marcia Clark Campbell, followed by Jessica Bueno, followed by Dr. Pierce.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. I moved here last year a year ago, and I came here to address this chamber about the homelessness issue, and I couldn't forget it. I saw so many homeless people, and like Council Member Pastor mentioned, I saw a specific Native American, and I think I brought that issue up that time. I think it was June when I came and addressed this council, and it warms my heart that Native American Connections has built since then 2 properties. Because my thoughts were going up to God, and obviously He's going to fix it. But it's, as everybody here knows, those properties, the rents are very high. And so I know from personal experience that some of these Native Americans, they have to actually lie, which shouldn't have to be. Oh, so yeah, my daughter is going to move in with me. She's going to be living with me at the 1-bedroom house and 1-bedroom apartment just to get in. And so, yeah, this issue, I'm jumping up and down. I'm excited. I don't know if you can tell that you are actually addressing it. And I look forward to working with you because at the time I was volunteering with Ability 360, and I have worked with HUD when I first came to Phoenix, and so I did go down and ask them about the Native American, the gentleman that I saw homeless, and they said, well, he has to be living on the reservation to get any amenities. In any event, I don't know if you can see me. I'm jumping up and down right now, and I applauded, and thank you very much. One other thing I wanted to say is that the council members should appreciate that the homeless, they are the same way that we may be putting up fences and so on to protect ourselves from them. They may be afraid of us, so as Council Member Pastor said, and that this gentleman just disappeared when she was trying to give him some food. So yeah, I mean, it's the lack of trust, and change happens from the bottom up, and we should ask them what they want and listen. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jessica will be followed by Michael Pierce. Jessica and then Michael Pierce. I try to give people a warning so that you can know it's coming, but.
Hello, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the time to speak today. My name is Jessica Bueno. I am president of the Oakland Neighborhood Association. We're from Grand Avenue West to 19th Avenue, Van Buren, up to Roosevelt. Very much so what Mr. Nowakowski has been saying today is very much true. He hears our concerns, and luckily he's here representing us because much of yesterday's press conference did not address that. So I'm hoping that your push for this planning is going to actually result in actual tangible results. I know that the focus is very much so on the homeless issues, but we also have to take into consideration that the impact that is occurring on those neighborhoods. So I would just really push you to really reach out to community members like myself. I organize my neighborhood so we can come to these meetings and speak what we need done in our neighborhoods. And so I'm just really pushing that results get done and that neighborhood participation is the forefront of this group, this plan that you are taking on. We're a little too late in this process. Should have been done years ago. Last year we had a debunked city council. I understand process happens, but I think that time that we did not have a mayor really hurt this city, and this is what the result of it is. So I really encourage you. Really want to know about those stipulations because no community feedback has been given about those stipulations. So I'm here. I'm going to challenge the city. I'm going to challenge all city council and the mayor to provide the best quality services to the homeless and to make sure that our neighborhoods are safe, clean, and thriving. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Pierce will be followed by Leonard Clark.
Good afternoon. This is what happens when a problem is allowed to fester and not honestly dealt with. We are at the point where we can no longer ignore. Now, Anatole France, the French philosopher, said, "The majesty of the law which forbids the rich as well as the poor from sleeping under bridges." Now, the public consciousness recently has been stoked by the fears of virus. I would offer that social ills run along the model of virus, and this has mutated. Now, Councilor Stark made a great observation about our treatment of mentally ill. I would tell you, I would advise the city legal department to read closely the joint stipulation that ended the 40-plus year lawsuit of Arnold versus Sarnes. The state of Arizona made a commitment to fully fund adequate shelter for mentally ill homeless. And it's not Phoenix's only responsibility. It is the regional center of the region. And a problem that has many causes will require as many cures. Now, under that proposed settlement, I, as a member of that lawsuit, have standing. And I think that the city would have standing too to enforce in court and make the state of Arizona do what they have to do. It's not just Phoenix. It's all of us. And if we don't deal with it, well, in the words of Winston Churchill, they that will not when they may, when they will, they shall have nay.
Thank you. Leonard Clark, followed by Eva Olivas.
I don't know if it's a legend that Abraham Lincoln's hand was shaking when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, but you hear about great things being done. Sometimes politicians such as yourselves might not just do it because you just wanted to do it. All I know is that Mayor Kate Gallego has had the courage to do this. So she's taking a lot of flack. You're taking a lot of flack from the neighborhoods. I would ask the neighborhoods. Just as the doctor said before me in versus Sarnes, this case that he's talking about mental ill, I would ask Cel DeCiccio and my conservative friends. It's not just the city level. The state legislature, they fought against housing rents. This president right now is slashing the housing for HUD. Once again, the president's proposed budget would leave poor older consumers, individuals with disabilities, and families with young children in desperate shape. I mean, there's going to be huge cuts. The plan calls for cutting the Department of Housing and Urban Development's budget by nearly $9 billion. That's along with the food stamps, otherwise known as SNAP now. So I want to salute the mayor's courage, but this is not just going to be dealt with, like this is just one piece of the puzzle. I agree, Councilman DeCiccio, and I ask with the mayor, where do you want those locations put? I hear my conservative friends, because this is not about conservative or liberal. This is about human beings. We have to think out of the box, because Phoenix is not a box. It's going to sound corny. Phoenix is a big heart. Yes, I know my conservative friends will say that's something like being a snowflake, but you know what? Whether we like it or not, Phoenix is growing. We're the 5th largest or 6th largest city in the country. We are contending with a legislature, again, that's not helping us, a county, in fairness to Councilman Nowakowski. So I don't blame the mayor. I thank her, and I thank all of you for your courage, because we've had this problem foisted on us, our beautiful brothers and sisters. It's not a crime to be homeless. It's not illegal to be homeless. They're going to have a meeting, I've heard, by Margaret Hans Park today, and I hope you'll show up there. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Eva will be followed by Walter Gray.
Mayor, Council. So it's been an interesting week, I have to say. I was pretty surprised with the press conference yesterday, and probably even more surprised and very, very grateful today for the council that sits before me. I'm obsessed with watching national politics right now, which is really sad to say, but you know, yesterday's press conference and just some of the things that have occurred this week, I was like, oh my God, our council is going to be matching the atmosphere, the people that are happening in Washington. And I have sat here today and felt very proud of the council for the unity that you're showing, the focus that you're showing on this issue. And it really has made me realize that, you know, that you are doing what you claim to do, which is really show some leadership. I want to tell you that, you know, the homeless people are important to us. I work primarily with the communities that are on both sides of the campus. We work with about 78 communities, and there are 23 of them around the campus with neighborhood groups. And the homeless population is important to us, but you need to understand we are all human beings. They're here, they're Phoenicians to us. We need them to be helped, but we need to be helped too. So we need you to understand these are human beings in these neighborhoods, and we want everybody to have equal access to the same thing that every other neighborhood would have access to. Clean streets, be safe. You know, our schools have security guards. We want to have the same thing that all neighborhoods have, and we want the homeless to have the fair share of services that they need. We also feel that, you know, we're going to get into the issues, but it's really important. The transparency, the stipulations that you're going to develop in those strategies are critical to the success. Our residents want to help contribute ideas. We have thoughts on what could make a difference. And so we ask that you make sure you reach out to all the neighborhoods that we work with. The leaders are ready, they're available. I know we have a meeting with Councilman Garcia tomorrow just because they want to connect. We are hoping that our council leaders are taking our message back and that people are listening to them. So we ask that you understand we're here to support you in this effort. And don't discount the wisdom of the people and at their front door. Thank you.
Well said, thank you. Is Mr. Walter Gray with us? We have 5 cards in favor of item 93, not wishing to speak. David Nelson with Take Action Phoenix, Elizabeth Venable, who asked us to consider increasing the budget, so aligned with Councilman DeCiccio. Linda Kalina, Larissa Balderrama, and Pam Fitzgerald. We have a motion on the table. We do not have a second yet.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Perfect. And so in case the microphone did not catch Councilman Nowakowski, he just wanted to confirm, and I will confirm, this will be a complete, full, robust process for the Human Service Campus application that is completely separate from the citywide enhanced homelessness plan on which we are about to vote. Councilwoman Pastor.
I have one question, because the plan is supposed to come back in June. My question is, by then, the budget, will have already gone through the budget. So what are we anticipating?
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, we actually have something we did similar to what we might do here with the Traumatic Incident Review Committee, where that was going on sort of out of cycle with our budget. And so we just put a block of money in the budget that then later in the year, once the council had formulated a plan, was available for the council to allocate specifically to what came out of that plan. So that might be a pathway here, is put some block of money aside so that once the plan is done and the council has set forward some things they want to do, you can allocate that specifically. So the one does not have to confine the other.
Okay, but I guess where I'm leading to is if the plan shows that it's more than 3 million, we will all have already gone through a process. So yeah. I'm just cautious, putting caution to for as you go through the process and see there possibly may need more money, and so you'll know what to do and how to shift.
Mayor, Councilman Pastor, that's a great point. And one thing I can say with absolute certainty is that fully addressing the issue of homelessness will absolutely cost more than $3 million. It will cost more than $30 million. It will cost more than we have for our budget. However, what we will be able to do is put some money in, and you can evaluate that relative to other things in the budget. And that's what the budget process is for then, for you to evaluate those against each other.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Councilman Nowakowski.
So what's the makeup of this committee? Is it going through a subcommittee? Is there going to be a committee that you're appointing? How do we make sure that we have people that are being affected that are on this committee? I'm not sure how this committee is going to be organized.
I don't believe that this is about a committee. As my understanding is, there's a direction, if the vote passes, there's a direction to spend staff time to develop a plan. Our commitment is that we would try to get as much public input as we could, and we've heard from you all things that you'd like to have. If we can do a survey, do some things we've done before, I would anticipate, unless the mayor sets it differently, we would bring that plan back to the full council. I think you said a policy meeting in June.
My suggestion would be the first policy meeting in June.
That would come back then for the council to look at. My guess is that's going to be the first iteration of it, and then there will be lots of input from the council at that point in a public setting that then we'll just continue to work with the council on that. But I did not understand there to be a formal committee.
I guess I have been thinking that the public works rate process was a good example. Well, I guess it's not a perfect example, but that we would have community meetings, that council members could identify certain communities that might need multiple community meetings. Some council members chose to go door to door if they felt that that was the best way to communicate. For some people, an online survey was the best way, but that council members really know where the needs are and could talk about where we should host community meetings or what would be the best way to get stakeholder input. But it seems to me this is a matter that would be worth bringing to the full council at a policy meeting. Councilwoman Pastor?
I would, just a suggestion, it's up to you, and you know how to roll out in the community, but I would do it in buckets. And like, if you're going to talk about affordability, what does that look like? If you're going to talk about workforce, what are the elements of workforce? I would start, because it's a big process, or you have different teams simultaneously going in different districts, so that one district may be talking about at this month, I'm just going to give an example, March may be talking about services, and then the other district is talking about workforce. And so it's moving simultaneously, because 6 months is not a lot of time with the situation that we're in, or the dynamic, or trying to come up with solutions and be ready for the legislature.
Councilwoman Williams.
I would like, we pay, I've forgotten their name. What's the organization that goes out and asks them if they want service now?
Community Bridges.
Community Bridges. Instead of just asking them if they want services, do a real legitimate survey, asking them if they want services, but what particular would help them get off the street, is see what they need, because there's a long list, and it depends on whether they're just homeless, or they have mental problems, or it's a preferred lifestyle. And I think we need to identify what those three groups are, because they're each different, I think, in their needs. And then talk with the court, too, on who's going through mental health court and who's going in drug court. As an example, I mean, that's going to give you a pretty good read on who's had multiple arrests, who's going through, and make the choice whether they will go into services or they want to go to jail. I think that's going to tell you a lot, too. So I'd really like people to talk to the homeless, because I think that's the true story.
Mayor, Councilwoman Williams, just also to add there, I want to set expectations just a little bit here, because we have to remember we're not adding staff to do this. We're having our existing staff, in addition to what they're working on, do this as well. And we also at this time are doing 19 budget hearings in the community in the month of April. So our ability to do a huge effort like Public Works is a little bit limited, but what we may be able to do is to identify in this 90 days, as the councilwoman mentioned, the buckets, and then as we come back, talk about how to further get input, if we haven't been able to do it in the 90 days, how to further do that afterwards. So I just want to be careful. I don't know that we're going to be able to get a plan that will solve all the problems in 90 days, but we can at least identify the outlines of it, set some pathways, and then talk with the council at that meeting about how to further that.
Thank you. That is a very responsible proposal, and we can't clone Tamara as far as we know.
Yeah,
There's only one Tamara and one Deanna, and so
I don't expect staff to follow up. I think we already have people in contract that should be able add it. I mean.
Yes, and I think many of these things we can do in this time. I'm just worried about committing to doing too many meetings while we're also doing all of our budget hearings. So, but we can talk about whether CBI is able to give us input, and others as well. You know, we can talk to some of our other contractors about what information can we get from them to feed into this from CAS itself.
What we're doing is not highly successful now.
Right.
So I think we need to be actually talking to the people that we're trying to serve that doesn't accept. So find out what they really need.
Final comment from Councilman Nowakowski.
So Ed, I heard the concern, what's happening in Jim Waring's district and everybody's district here. I know in the past we had issues with the bike systems that we have here, the roads and all that. So we actually had individuals that were concerned about bike paths and routes and all that to come 45 minutes prior to their budget hearing, and the council members were able to come a little earlier to listen to those concerns. I believe we've done that a couple of times. I think this is like what Jim was saying, this is a crisis that affects every single district. I think with our budget hearings, we should maybe allocate a half hour prior where we can actually hear the concerns. The other suggestion is, I believe my colleagues need to take a ride until you actually see it, touch it, feel it. You don't know what the experience is that these people that live around the campus is experiencing. And I think that I was hearing some of the concerns that they had in different districts. I say, wow, that would be great if that was just the problem in those neighborhoods. We can handle that. So I think it's something that we should really maybe look in the future, Mayor, and taking some type of field trip. I know the Vice Mayor did that for her district, and it worked out really successful. And I think if there's some hot spots in other districts, maybe we should do that. And then the other thing is, I really like to look at giving back to the community, having some kind of portion of that resources or money to actually beautify or basically help those neighborhoods take back their neighborhoods and bring them back to the standards that they were before.
Thank you, Councilman. And Community Bridges is also open if people wanted to do shadows with Community Bridges, and I think the more we can be directly out in the community, the better. Councilmember.
I just wanted to kind of second that comment. I think the one clear bucket that's there is the communities that are around there, so we can either add extra to the 3 or figure out. I wouldn't want to take more because I know we're gonna do that, but I think one of the clear buckets is to address the neighborhoods around there. And so I don't know if it's adding it here or what it's done, but I think we need to take that crisis in and try to fix it first. And so I just want to make sure, especially as this potential zoning cases moving forward, that the residents around CAS are taken care of.
Good suggestion. Thank you. I think we are ready for roll call.
DeCiccio?
Oh, hold on. Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark?
Yes.
Waring? Williams?
Yes.
Guardado?
Yes.
Gallego?
Yes. Passes unanimously. Thank you all for your great input, and thank you to staff for taking on a important piece of additional work. That concludes the agendized portion of our meeting. We will now move to citizen public comment. And John Deere or John Deal? John Deal would be first, followed by Noah Schneider.
Okay, John Deal. I'm here from RJ Ularic, and for myself, about me, born here, third generation. My grandfather his first job was watering the plants along Center Avenue, a toll road back then, Central today. He worked for William J. Murphy, built the Arcadia, the canals, all the orchards, all the way into Scottsdale, down to Papago Park. I'm here to talk about Papago Park. The situation is very sad, and I can't believe that the members of the council agreed to that contract, the lease to the city of Scottsdale, which subleased it to the Giants baseball club. I was walking in November along the highway there in the park, and all of a sudden I hit, where I usually walk, I hit a big green wall. Trump would have been happy. He would have been proud of it. It was right in the path where I usually had walked. I started trying to find out what was happening. I got a copy of the mentioned lease. There's only two words to describe it. It's shoddy, it's shady. I don't know, once again, I don't think the council knew what they were doing. They had no ideas of the implication of that document. What we have is, right now, the Giants are building an area far greater that's in that lease. What's going to happen to them? Not only that, it's supposed to be remodeled. It's not a remodel. They bulldozed the whole darn place, and they're rebuilding from scratch. I don't even understand why there's a lease and a sublease, since they mirror each other. The city of Phoenix could have very well have leased it directly to the Giants. There's something there, I don't know what it is. The rent, monthly rent, folks, $4,250 a month. Chicken feed. And it's tax-free chicken feed because the lease says it's a government activity. How a professional baseball team is a government activity, I have no idea. And they're building more. It's not just that. The whole area north of McDowell is a goner. They're building pathways. They dumped a parody of a parking lot there next to the softball facility. I'm upset. The master plan's included. I won't even go there. So what we have here, we have a private facility, an enclosed private facility in the middle of a public park, a park that was deeded to the city of Phoenix for a park only, for public use, for public enjoyment, and all that. And those are in the contract. It's unbelievable. And this is a violation of the deed. I don't know. So I'm upset. I have here a citizen's petition for the city clerk, signed. And also copies for the city manager, for Councilman DeCiccio, Mayor Gallego, and also the city attorney. I want to thank all of you, the citizens, our eloquent mayor, and everybody here. This is not going away. I will not let it go away. Look at the Friends of Papago Park on Facebook. This is sad.
Thank you. Noah Schneider, followed by Lita Flowers.
Hi. Hi. I'm going to speak on my mom's behalf. She's sorry. The whole thing's taken a toll on her voice because of her syndrome. First of all, Sjogren's. Sorry. First of all, I'd like to say hello and thank you for your time and listening to what we have to say. My name is Noah Schneider, and this is my mom, Jennifer Johnson. Please call her JJ. In the last 2 years, she's been married, divorced, homeless, and had both legs amputated, and been on life support 3 times. And at one point, she was even put on, eventually removed from hospice. She's a single mother of 5, ranging from 17 and 28 years old. As you can see, she's what she's called a BACA, meaning she's a bilateral above knee amp. She also has 2 rare autoimmune disorders that cause blood clots and extreme fatigue. One of the disorders is named Sjogren's syndrome. Sjogren's attacks the moisture gland. Sjogren's is also confuses the effect stress and has on the body. And it thinks it's a virus, and it triggers it by its own body to attack itself. She's not supposed to be here today, but you can see she is. According to tradition society, I tell myself I'm not supposed to be at a lot of places, doing a lot of things, yet I am. She may not have a voice, but I may not be the voice of everyone, but I am the voice of many. I tried utilizing the sidewalks in the city of Phoenix with my wheelchair, but sadly, most of the sidewalks are not in direct sight of tourists that aren't in the best neighborhoods or narrow. The deplorable conditions with outdated and dangerous intersections and ramps. With the stress and anxiety using the sidewalks became too much to bear, I tried the Valley Metro bus line. It turned out to be one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life. Most people are unaware of there is 2 different bus companies, First Transit and Transdev, that hold contracts with the bus line. 2 heads on the same dragon. I'm here to speak about Transdev. In November, I declined to have my chair chopped to the floor. I was informed by a Transdev driver that it's policy if I do not, they would have to call the supervisor and the police. They have this strong policy on how many times I decline and tell them. They have violated my basic human rights because I am a dependent on them. I am either harassed, bullied, or embarrassed until I submit and finally comply or I'm picked off the bus. Some drivers agree with me and others just comply and have my way or the highway attitude. The last incident happened on Friday, completely humiliated me in front of me and other kids. I do have videos available if you're interested in seeing them. On Friday, I was declined to be unlawfully restrained. The driver made me a scene and threatened me. They called the police and turned away about 5 passengers, and they even walked away. When 6 cities and Phoenix officers showed up, I took my son and told him we had 2 choices, either go to jail or in change. And my son looked at me and said, let's do it. My calls went ignored until, I kind of skipped, sorry.
And thank you. I believe my staff is already working with you. I appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and we are gonna try to continue to follow up and see if we can.
We've been in negotiations to get it changed. It is not policy. They said it was policy. It's not policy. It was a mistake. Somebody at Transdev misunderstood the wording. It is not policy. The Transit Authority's been great. We're working to fix it now. They're going to put a sticker on within a week that says you have the right to not be to be restrained. No decisions without us.
Okay.
But there's a severe disconnect with Transdev, and I really hope you guys look into this.
Thank you. And we do have a representative from our transit department here, and my staff has been in touch with you, and I will commit we will follow.
And Captain called me, and you guys have been in constant contact making sure we're okay and this is addressed, and I very appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your words. Mrs. Flowers will be followed by Leonard Clark.
Hello, my name is Lita Flowers, and I just want to start with there's a separation between church and state, and not state and government. And what I think about public polling is it doesn't work. We've been polling for a long time, I think. And in fact, your city council was right down here saying to the homeless, come up, we'll feed you and we'll pay you. And these were lobbying people that were going around about homelessness. several people arrived and nobody was there. You want to talk about mind games? One nation under God did not mean to nitpick the Bill of Rights, but it seems like a Toastmasters wheeling and dealing. It really does. I mean, for example, some help would be, you know, in the area of planning and development, to use your codes. What's wrong with codes? I mean, they have violations. I mean, how many feet from a oven can you put a cabinet? Otherwise, it can catch on fire, right, fire people? So trains, planes, and automobiles. I mean, just it's in the historical codes for the medical, fire, and buildings. Even my grandfather was, a carpenter, and he basically, used his codes. The number, we've done noise pollution before through the FFA and through medical. Why can't you get it together? How about putting a meter at the police department? That way they don't have to run out every second. And I'll tell you what, that, if they are alerted to a noise, they don't have to run out every. The thing is, they read your Miranda rights, and what is it first? It's a warning. Basically, I want to say that you're feeding your people to the Boston Tea Party's overboard or Tea Party. Thank you.
Thank you. Leonard Clark, our final card is from J.J. Johnson, who I believe already spoke.
Thank you. Mayor, I want to first thank the city clerk and the city clerk staff, excellent staff. Here's my dirty laundry in public to everybody out there in Phoenix. I have a political action committee. Okay, I don't know what's going on. Arizona Secretary of State, I can file on my phone. I don't have a computer. They always help me, and they deserve a medal. I'm always in there. But the thing is, I want to pay in payments. Secretary of State, when I have fines on a political action committee, they'll let me pay. They're saying there's no apparatus in place where I can pay payments. Can I come work? You want me to sweep once in a while? Do you want me to be on a committee? It's just, I just want to pay off my debt to the city of Phoenix. It's for the oversight board. I've had it in there for 2 years, and I admit my negligence, even though it does seem like the system that is in place in the city of Phoenix, it should be just like Secretary of State. And they did tell me they'll be working with your folks maybe in several years to smoothline. But can I please make payments? Because they're telling me it's like a sharecropper system. I mean, I owe you guys forever. It's like, I just want to pay my $2,000 fine in payments. And yes, to my conservative friends, I will work. I'm not, can't lift too much, but, I can, in between my other jobs that I do, I will come out here. And then my last thing is, second to last thing, Greta Thunberg. I'm very concerned because in the inner city, I talk to the different students and people that are younger, and they've not ever heard of her. And here we are with this whole man-made global climate change thing going on. I know we can't get our conservative friends to do this, but please, prove me wrong. Why don't you guys invite her over to Phoenix? That would really make, I'm sure, our friends in the legislature very happy. But then finally, on a very sad note that I didn't get to tell you, I was at the legislature about a month ago, and I watched a man grab oranges from what is a artificial orange tree. And I'm just standing in amazement because I'm down the street. All the politicians are right there. They're eating. They're being fed by some corporation out on the lawn. And this man looks very fearful, like the council lady Laura Pastor said. He looked around and he grabbed 2 or 3 artificial oranges. And I'm like, well, he can't eat them. So I thought as soon as he bit into them, he would stop. He tore them open, started eating, and just devoured them. And I'm like, So all I'm saying is I like the part about you folks trying to do ride-alongs, because a lot of folks are going to say, what are we going to do? You know, I know you're trying, but I'm asking our church folks, Andre House, everybody to come together on that. But please let me do payments. Please, I can't pay the whole $2,000. I'll never pay you. I'm always going to owe you guys. That's all I'm asking. Thank you. And you can call me. You know my number. I'll make payments. I'll come work. I'll set up a community thing for me, okay? All right.
Our city
Thank you.
clerk is going to follow up with you.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
And I believe, unless J.J. Johnson is here, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.